official meeting.
Make sure I've got your attention. Meeting's called to order. We have roll call. Jim Richard. Here. Mark Miller. Here. Kirk Tate. Here. Maurice Gilbert. In the building.
He's here.
I know he's here. He's in the building. Pam Farrow.
Here.
Bill Meyer. Here. Jennifer Frost.
Here.
Cindy Commissioner Meadows.
Here.
And Tim Norris present. Okay, let's see, we have any comments from the public before we get started? All right, with there being none, at this time we have an approval of minutes, but I want to make one note. We voted to put Kirk Tate on the Destination Improvement Committee. It should have been the Beach Management Committee, so I want to make those changes in the minutes. And I need a motion.
So moved.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion approved. Okay, and approved for the minutes. Got a motion? Gary Brumeyer and Commissioner Meadows, second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay. Financial.
Good morning, Council, Commissioner. I'm happy to report that April road tax collections are up 20% over last April. With Easter falling between April and March, if you combine the two, out of $3 million in collections, we are up about $20 million over the last two, March and April of the last year.
Good.
Enclosed in your report, you have your March and April expenditure reports. Your March, $20,000.
20%. 20,000.
Yeah. Your March and April check registers, and your revenue and reserve balance report. If you add all four reserve accounts, we have an excess of $36 million. Does anyone have any questions?
I just have one question, one comment. Any of the new board members, I just want to make sure, y'all don't be bashful to ask questions, okay? They're here to answer any questions. It's not a dumb question out there, so please ask. Thank you.
I have a question, Michelle. Of that $36 million in reserve, how much of it is spoken for, I guess the word, or allocated?
We're working on a plan right now for the future for the reserve balances. In the past, it's been that we always try to hold aside a year's worth of operating expenses to keep in case of the whatever catastrophe. But other than that, we are developing a plan on how to execute those.
To generally answer that question, Commissioner, of course, the third penny, the beach nourishment money, is spoken for. It's specifically for beach nourishment. And then the other pennies, the fourth and the half cent, they're spoken for in those contexts, overseas new product, and then the half penny as emerging markets. On the admin side, we've kind of fenced off about half of the 18 million that's there to support the beach nourishment project, because there's a question on whether or not we will get $12 million from the state, which is what was the original plan to support that project. So we are developing a unfunded requirements list, and it's everything from the little connector of the bike trail there by Topsail to 98, where there is no bike trail, to destination improvements in the entryways and some other things. So we'll bring you all that list hopefully in August.
Any other questions? Thank you. And we need a motion to approve the budget?
Motion to the financials.
Yeah. Motion? So moved. Second? Second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion passed. Thank you.
Okay, council members, the next item is the special event marketing grants, and I just want to take a second. This is the book that Kelly and Pamela and Angela and probably some other folks compiled, and we had the committee go through, the events committee go through and rank order all these. Then we took their rank order, their priorities, and we assigned a funding level to that. One of the things we've asked the committee to do this year, within the next 6 months, is to come up with a better rubric on how we assign the money. So we say it's for shoulder season. We currently, don't incentivize necessarily the shoulder season. We try to, which is the reason for the second look, but we want a very detailed schematic that says if it's in June, it gets 0 points. If it's in September, it gets 20 points or whatever, so that we have that. So having kind of walked you through the process a little bit, these are the events that we are recommending be funded in FY15 and the amounts that we are recommending. There's a couple that have gone down. Most have gone up. One of the ones that went down from last year, Destin Charity Wine Auction. In that rubric that I discussed before, one of the things I would like to see is that if you have a different destination's name in your event name, you get 0 funding. So it's always going to be put on by the Destin Charity Wine Auction Foundation, and it can be the Southwest or South Walton Wine Auction, or it can be the South Walton and Destin Wine Auction. I don't care, but it just doesn't make sense to me that we would spend money generated here, even though the event primarily occurs here, that we would spend money to promote a different destination. We also, I think, went down Arts Quest. It's a wonderful event, and all these are wonderful events, but our observation is this doesn't really bring in a whole lot of heads and beds to generate bed tax revenue. So we're gonna have a better way, I guess, of discerning. And we're working with our research company, and he'll talk about that a little bit later this morning. Yes, sir.
Let me ask the first dumb question. Something like the Destin Charity Wine Festival, that has momentum.
Mm-hmm.
Does it really need the TDC to support it? And is there some sort of a rubric that you use that you support an event for 40 years, whatever, and then stop it, or is it just, it goes on forever?
And when we talked to the events committee, that was one of the items that we told them we wanted to do. We shouldn't be funding using new product money, product development money for something that's been going on 25 years. And of course, some of these have heartstrings attached to them and agendas, but a perfect example is the Seaside Half Marathon. Wonderful event. It brings in a lot of heads and beds, but at some point, it's gotten so big, we should go back and take the money and start new events in those periods where we don't have any events. The half marathon's going to sell out. It's going to put the heads in the beds, whether we give it $500 or $50,000. And so that's one of the things that we asked the events committee to, when they develop the rubric. At some period, again, it's a points assignment. You can get 20 points up to 5 years, then you can only get 15 points, then you can get 10 points and 5 points. But I'm going to let them kind of work out that math.
Yeah, but I have a question too. When you look at this list, and I know a lot of people like wine, but so I don't want to say something's unpopular, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of these events out of 22, 21, are wine festivals. Now, I think it should be in categories. I don't see any eco-exploring in here at all. I don't see any, anything nature-based events. And I'm wondering how many people applied for this and how many people got money.
This is who applied. Okay, we had 21, I believe, this year and 22 last year.
Okay,
Kelly.
so everybody that applied got some.
There's one that did not get anything, and that was
2015 Power.
yeah, the Commerce, the
Which one?
Energy Power Up down there. 2000. That's basically a conference that they were asking for us to fund.
Okay.
And that's we wouldn't fund the lawyers from Alabama coming down.
Yeah.
Hilton might underwrite them,
Yeah, gotcha. Well, and that's one thing that I would like to see is maybe categories, you know, I mean, 2 wine festivals, 3 wine festivals, whatever. That's, you know, I think we need to diversify the activities. It's too much of the same thing. And, you know, these wine festivals are expensive. And so, most of a lot of people can't afford to go to
Right.
these wine festivals. So more family type events maybe, and more arts type events, and more eco-exploring nature based. I'd like to see.
Okay.
Jim, if I could just follow up on the question, and John Russell is here, I hope that he doesn't jump up and say this, but just as an example, Destin Wine Festival went from about $1.3 million last year to about a little over $2 million this year. They have tremendous, whatever, mojo, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
It's working. What do we give them, $5,000? Is that really necessary for them? As an example, Destin Charity Wine Festival. Okay, they,
No, it's 10,000.
well, they requested 10, but the final, it says final
Oh,
5.
okay, gotcha.
Whatever, it was 5 or 10. Again, I'm not trying to pick on them, I'm just using this as an example. That kind of an organization, that kind of event has been there, it attracts a lot of people. How can we say that it really is, that we're helping them put heads in beds? See what I'm getting at? What's the
Well,
connection?
we believe the data shows that they are putting, now there are a lot of locals go to that wine
Oh,
festival.
no, they are. What I'm saying
Yes.
is, how are we helping them do it? There's no doubt that they're putting heads in
Right.
beds, but how is the money that we're giving them attracting? In other words, if we gave
Well,
them
because they have
nothing.
to use it just for marketing, so they can't use it for, to buy another 2 bottles of wine or whatever.
Right.
They have to report it.
Right,
They
they
have
have
to
to,
fill out
there's a final
form.
report.
Okay.
I think Kurt has some.
Yeah, does any of this set aside specifically for new things? In other words, would it be advisable to say, okay, let's take 10% of this and just say, okay, we're looking for new things, because we are looking for new things, right? Just like Cindy said.
Right.
So maybe if we, focused on that, I saw that there were 4 new ones applying, basically.
Right.
And we did fund 3 of them to some extent, I
Right.
guess, but for example, they're new, and I don't know, this 38 Throwdown, this will be the second year, because they did have it this year.
Right.
Why did we give them 5,000 instead of, why do you only give them 3 instead of 5 versus giving more to,
Well, and that's why we have a bifurcated process. So we have the events committee, people who live here, the people who are serving y'all, basically, and they say, yeah, I went to that, and I knew everybody there. Or I went to that, and there were 100 people there, but I knew 70 of them. And so they give us that sense of community. That's where we get, that's what the committee really does. That's their purpose there, is to kind of rank order those. And the ones that didn't get a whole lot of money typically are new, don't have a history built up where they have an attendance, and don't have a history where they can show, yes, our lodging partner was the Hilton, and we filled up 200 rooms in the Hilton that weekend. So that's, okay. Okay, Wyndham Vacation, okay, Wyndham is our lodging partner, because they partner with everybody. And they filled up 10,000. So, the 38 Throwdown, it was a wonderful event, but it didn't really generate a whole lot of
well,
hits.
and it's brand new, and that's why.
Right, and that's why.
But I think that's why I kind of think it would be a good idea if we said, we want new stuff, let's slot a certain percentage or something for only new events. That way, we encourage that more, so.
And I think that's a good recommendation as far as a guideline. If we only have one new event and we have $40,000 set aside for new events, then they don't get $40,000 if they can't prove that they're going to bring heads and beds. So I think the event committee, and Pam is your representative on the event committee, I think she's taking all this in, and I'm taking notes here too. So when we go to the committee, we'll give them that feedback.
Have we gone out and said to the public that if you have a new event that you think of, we'll have some funding for you?
I think that is fairly well known
Okay.
in the community, to be honest.
People
That's
may
how we
create
got
a
4
really
this
good
year.
event.
Yeah, that's how we got 4 this year.
Okay.
Yeah. And we've had people apply in the past that didn't get funded, and so they didn't come back a second year because it's a wonderful event, but it's a locals wonderful event, and that's not what we're about. So we would ask, hopefully I got everybody's questions, recommendation to approve to take to BCC.
We have a recommendation, we have a motion to, we have a motion to recommend to approve.
Second. Oh, you want
We
the
have
motion, I'll make the
Okay, motion, we have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
Second, Art Miller. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, there'll be one other item that I want to, and I forgot to mention this. If you look at the bottom, there's 25,000 in contingent fee. Because there's not a week that doesn't go by to your, do we know, somebody comes in and goes, hey, I want to do like last year, it was the 38th Throwdown, and it's like, okay. You know, you come to us in the middle of the year, we already approved funding for this year like 8 months ago. So we can fund an event that pops up. The other thing is we've been talking with one of the events that does not occur in the shoulder season, asking them to move to the shoulder season, and that we might be able to provide more marketing funding if they moved into, say, September, which is kind of the dearth. So that's why that contingency is built in. But what we're going to do, I'm working out the mechanics with the finance folks and with Larry. We're going to ask the BCC to allow us to either move money from our unanticipated revenues or from one of the reserve accounts this year to fund this. Because one of the things when I came on last year that struck me as an unusual way of doing business is this gets approved in June or May, but what we tell the events folks is, now that's not guaranteed because until they approve the budget, and the budget actually goes into effect 1 October. Well, if you have an event in October and you're trying to place ads right now, you kind of have to have a sense of there's going to be that money at the end of the tunnel that you were promised. And so that's why we're going to try to fund this, and then we'll just roll the money forward. But there's some kind of a mechanics issue we're working on. But I'd ask for a motion to recommend to the BCC that they approve funding this. And Larry had a couple of different ideas, but I would just say approve funding this now, or in this year.
All right. So we need a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Carry to the BCC to approve
For the BCC to
For
approve.
this budget.
for this budget.
Right.
Commitment.
Right.
Really, you're appropriate, we're going to ask them to appropriate the money again. This, what you previously did, authorize funding the events, now we're asking you to appropriate funding this year. Or ask the BCC.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you. All right. Start.
Good morning, yes. Talking marketing philosophy a little bit to get started. I'm not going to read all these bullets to you. The graph actually does a decent job. I think everybody knows that we've come off a period where this would be general characterization of the spend, marketing spend over the last few years. And big issue would be that the half cent is going to sunset this year. That half cent was put in play to perform marketing and missions in Chicago's, in Dallas's, in Nashville's, and so that's going away. So what we did is went back to the calculator and tried to see, could we remain flat in our marketing spend without that half cent? And being that collections have been up consistently for many years, we have achieved the math to go ahead, and the black box actually sort of visually gives you that. If we fund that 1.42, which would have come out of half cent, from our 4 core cents, we can remain almost flat going forward to next year. I think this is pretty important when you look at the decline in spending that we've had, is to not continue that decline and try to hang on to what we have. So we have achieved that in this budget going forward, and all of the other things that we've been asked to account for. So that's going to be submitted with the full budget, and I think there's some reassuring sense about us finding a new level that we can maintain going forward. On page 2 of this document, which you have in your book, it talks a little bit about reserve spending. And Commissioner Meadows, you asked about, is there any, commitments to these dollars currently? The short and the sweet of it is, in the Emerging Markets Fund, there's going to be about $3 million at the end of this fiscal year, and in the shoulder season, product development, there's about $5.8 million that will be in reserve. So we are submitting a budget, and Jim will touch on this a little bit more, that deploys 10% of that. Very, very cautious, very modest, but instead of those dollars continuing to sit in the bank year after year after year, taking a little bit of that and working, again, you saw the decline in spending. This is one way to have a little bit more spending out of those two buckets, and they are dedicated ordinances to do emerging market business and to do shoulder season business. So this would still leave $5.3 million, for example, in shoulder season if a contingency came up or a need came up, and still leave about $3 million in the emerging market if Love Field's mission in Southwest came to us, or the airport board, which thankfully Ms. Meadows is going to be sitting on in July. They're headed to Edmonton to pitch 12 airlines to see if ECP is an option. And so the blue is still sitting there for reserve in substantial amounts. And if we have spending that continues to do as well as April, May, June, we'll have even more money in the reserve potentially. So this is going to get submitted as part of the budget. And that's all just essentially lead up to share the media flow chart with you, which you have seen this before. And if you recall, we approved the co-op portion of it because we needed to timeline that and get that into circulation. The green, we had not asked you for your blessing prior, but this is the full plan, and it hasn't changed since the last time you saw it for co-op only. So these are the net media deployments that we have done in the past, that have worked well, that we can fund. And any specific questions, I know we discussed this a little bit last time, but we would want to seek your recommendation to the to the BCC just for the core stuff. We've already processed the co-op stuff, the orange. You have obviously print, digital, TV, radio, the same mix that we've shared with you before. We've been dedicated to that pie chart, if you remember back many meetings ago, and have been diligent to continue that blend, that successful blend.
John, I just want to say, I really feel that this plan that y'all put together, Jim and John, that it's a prudent plan. I feel it's a strategy going and trying to keep a level to this program is very important, especially to the bid taxpayers.
It's an important point in that, and obviously Zender's a big part of that. We've had the luxury of purchasing a lot of media, and so this is actually the experience from purchasing 3 times this amount, and when we had to drop back to this lower money, you take the things that were the best producers. So after a catastrophe spend, you actually don't have to have a crystal ball. You can follow the successes. And so that's really what this plan is based on. And there's very few dramatic adjustments to this. I wouldn't say there's any dramatic adjustments, just a publication here or there.
Okay. John, can you give us a sense of how much of this media plan is directed at shoulder season versus peak season?
It ends up being about half and half between the two pennies. And we've actually talked about continuing to prioritize shoulder. And that is something that I think this organization has done for 10 years. The event grants, which we just reviewed, is spending for one purpose, to bolster shoulder. That's $444,000 in addition to this. So there's a pretty significant spend, and if you look at the bed tax collections for the last 10 years, our non-peak economy has grown 100%, which is a staggering 10% average for a decade with a recession in it, while our shoulder season has grown 50% in those 10 years, which is still a success beyond most people's expectations. So as this organization continues to look at a 12-month product, not just a summer product, I don't know that you can beat those numbers.
Just to help you, what he meant to say is the summer season only grew 50%, so the shoulder season grew twice. He said shoulder season 100%.
Peak
Yeah.
50%, non-peak 100%, sorry.
No, that's what you said.
All right.
If I got it, then.
Any other questions? Any other questions?
I hate to admit that I'm lost on anything in public, but help me understand where we are with the half-cent emerging markets issue. I've lost track of where we are with it.
Sure, the BCC voted to, it's gonna sunset, it was scheduled to sunset, and they reaffirmed that at their last meeting, so it's gonna sunset. And it won't be replaced with any destination improvements, half cent, or anything, it's just gonna sunset. So the letters are going out, I believe, this week from the clerk to the bed tax collectors, letting them know that after they remit their September bed tax numbers, they need to lower their rate to 4% for the month of October. So September 30th is when the 4.5 cent sunsets.
All right, do we have a motion to recommend to the BCC? Respond to the BCC?
So moved.
We have a motion, we have a second, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
Okay, so in addition to the media plan, which we just talked about, and if you recall me showing you the graph with the blue reserve accounts and spending 10% of those, the next draft in your package is the reserve spending recommendation. So not to go back and beat that up too much, but we'd be submitting this as well as part of our budget, and we'd come back to you with a marketing plan that would have placements and activations for those 10% of reserve dollars. So that's something that we would revisit with you, and you would have a chance to dialogue. And if obviously you have any input now, but this addresses why we would take funds out of reserve to do some very specific things. Again, keeping in mind that we do not have the half-cent income coming in. So the only way to really spend on these dedicated purposes would be for some very minor issues. Again, we have great content. How do we inject that into markets like the Dallas Metroplex area? And this strategy addresses that.
I have a question on
Yes,
that.
ma'am.
Under emerging market recommendations, y'all talk about there might be an opportunity for the Dallas-Fort Worth market. How definite is that to additional flights from Dallas International?
I'd love to say that it's definite, and I'm glad you brought it up because I think most of us know that there was some false reports on TV that Southwest had terminated service to certain areas. They never did. They load balance and adjusted the number of flights a day in their schedules.
That's just
Actually-
seasonal, correct?
Seasonal. Like, for example, they were gonna reduce Baltimore to minimal for 2 months. They've now come back and said they're only reducing that for 1 month. And so our flights to St. Louis seasonal, all of those things are basically unchanged after a lot of fluctuation. The Love Field moratorium is lifting October 13th, I think it is. And they have already published 15 locations that they're flying to. We are not one of them. However, Parker from the airport has said that he has been verbally told that ECP is going to be putting flights into Panama City. There just isn't anything signed, sealed, and delivered. So they continue to hustle as best they can to encourage that. So you can make a scenario with $3 million still in this reserve account. If we got that announcement and they told us what kind of schedule, we could go right behind that and jump on the bandwagon and do placement, digital activation, anything that we thought would bolster that plan, which of course Dallas is a massively important market to us.
It's my understanding also, unless something has changed, that Southwest has also secured additional gates on American Airlines.
It's a gate frenzy. They didn't get all the gates they wanted in Love Field, and so there's competition for them. They actually had a rate war to the 15 locations that they've already identified and lowered those rates to try to generate flights and enplanements so that they can go back and then make bids to get gates. So one of the reasons that we're in a little bit of limbo, in my opinion, and I think a lot of people's opinions, is because they're in such a state of flux. They don't have the number of planes they wish they had. It takes time to get them, and this competition for gates means that it is a Jenga for them right now. So we're kind of waiting and hoping, but their verbal was that they're coming.
Okay.
I just had another comment. You know, we got copies of the airport information.
Yes.
I think it would be good if we put some of that in the packet for board members, maybe next time.
Okay.
Because I found it very interesting. It showed, you know, the number of flights coming, going, the increase and the decrease and all that. And I think that would be good information for people to, and even maybe the minutes of the meetings, because there is discussion about what's actually going on over there, so.
And in the interim, until we can get that emailed to you, the monthly report, which went up on the website today, it's the last couple of slides, is what the commissioner is referring to primarily. There's some other information, but we'll get y'all copies of that. And if you go on the .org site and just pull up the monthly report and go to the very end of it, you can see the enplanements and deplanements, and then how it compares over time, over the years, as far as what they're scheduled. And then you can, when you see that, you can see why Southwest might pull some planes for a couple of months there where nobody's flying down here in South. Yeah.
I was surprised Key Lime Air flies out of there.
I don't know that one. Yeah, Key Lime.
Key Lime, does anybody know? Yeah, that was one of the carriers, I think.
Makes me thirsty.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Beer fest.
is it one of the?
Key West.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Where does it go? You know, what is it? And I didn't know that Delta flies out of there? Okay.
Well, and I mentioned it briefly, but I was actually surprised that list that Parker and I think Dan Rowe is going to Edmonton, that there's something like 20 airlines there, and they do have appointments with 12. And so
Okay.
they are literally beating doors and taking promotional materials that we've provided and that other 3 counties have provided to try to entice those carriers.
When you say Edmonton?
It's
where's-
like July.
Where's Edmonton?
Canada.
Canada,
Yeah.
okay, Edmonton,
Yeah.
Alberta?
It's a North
Okay.
American flight planning
Okay.
powwow that happens
No,
every
maybe it
year.
was Illinois or something, I just didn't know.
No, it was in Vegas last year, I think.
Okay, all right, great.
You good?
Okay.
So any other comments and feedback, and we'll work on the marketing campaign to deploy a conservative amount of this money for its purpose. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item is SOP. This is housekeeping, honestly. We have an SOP for most anything that we do or we try to develop. This has been in existence for years. If we have a sweepstakes and we have a winner through procedure and we offer it to them and they decline it, we continue to try to offer it. The SOP used to state that you had to have 4 failures to get to a 5th before you gave up. It literally was killing us in the time that it was taking to try to give this away. So we've adjusted the SOP to 3 attempts, and then it's considered abandoned. And I don't even honestly consider abandoned to be a bad word. We reach as many people through these sweepstakes as just about anything we do online. The opt-ins are good, the click-throughs are good. If the Wyndham Vacation Rentals was the prize that month, or Seaside, and they didn't actually have to host it, but they got all of those eyeballs, it's not a catastrophe. So we're very diligent. We want people to come and stay, but we're killing ourselves. So that this adjustment has been made, and with your recommendation, we would take a standard SO, standard operating procedure forward to the PCC.
How do you contact folks?
It's stipulated in about 12 pages of rules, but through the submission, most of them are required to give email and or phone, so we go back to email, we notify them. They are obligated to pay tax on anything over $500. Most of our prizes are very good, so there is a
Yeah.
tax, and so a lot of people will say, I'm not sure if I can come and I don't want to take the tax if I don't know that I can come.
Yeah.
What percentage gets turned down?
Would you say 20, less than 20% don't get the prize after everything's all said and done?
Why?
But it takes,
Could
for
be months.
example, in March, I finally gave away October. So it takes
crazy.
that long, because you have to give them long enough to say they don't want it. So we give them 10 business days, and then you have to connect with the next person. So you could potentially be 6 to 8 weeks after the end of that sweeps before you even get the third or fourth person.
What's the biggest reason for them turning them down?
The tax
And it does not include
responsibility.
airfare.
Or doesn't include
It
everything?
does not include airfare.
So we,
Including airfare, they would take it.
Maybe.
That increases the tax.
That increases the tax.
The tax, okay, there you go.
so we talked about whether we would write a check to account for the tax amount. We talked about a lot of things. And at this point, the program is working really well, except for the part where we're killing ourselves begging people to take it. And so if we reduce that to a more manageable level, we could still talk about augmenting their tax burden, but it's still working. The program's not suffering, the actual program's expanding, so.
John, how do you measure the success of this program?
By entries and by click-throughs and by requests for information. A lot of those people that may say, oh geez, I would love to be at the beach, then they have the option to click an additional box that says, can I please get a visitor guide sent to me? So it's one of the better requests for leads of anything that we do, and especially for the spend, it outperforms most everything we do. Now, are there some prospectors in there? Yes. But there's prospectors on your website every day asking for a visitor guide, and there's dreamers that want to come here for a lot of reasons. So I don't know that that voids any value in it.
Okay, so is it hitting the most demographic if the biggest reason not to come is they can't afford the tax? And I'm not trying to sound arrogant.
I think some of it is the unknown, like I don't know what it would do to my taxes, and I'm not really sure I want to take that risk. Obviously, the people that are opting into us have had some past history with us.
Right.
We do support it with purchases through travel outlets, but even those are sorted for household incomes and trying to target an upscale, middle class to upscale audience. So it's not as though we are purposely sending it to all consumers. We are still targeting where it's headed.
Basically, this is a program that's put on by a given bed tax collector or whatever.
Part of the co-op plan, actually, yeah.
Well, my thinking is that, for example, if Hibiscus had a thing that you did this thing with and somebody won it, that would be as much our obligation to try to contact that winner as Visit South Walton. It seems like it should be, it seems like the burden is falling on you to, I'd say why not cut it to 2 contacts and why not involve the property in making sure that the thing is given away?
I would say that there's some properties that would be excellent at that. There's other properties that, are awful busy and we have a hard time even getting them to address, standard business with us. We take the obligation very serious to follow this procedure every single time. Nobody's negotiating on the side, nobody's, freelancing. And again, the burden of having to fill out the tax papers and keep those. We're the ones that are out there broadcasting that to the world, so taking the responsibility to make sure it gets administered is something we do take seriously, which is why I'm standing here with a document that's being revised and going to the BCC for what is a fairly neutral program, honestly.
All right, so you need a motion?
For the BCC to consider the revised SOP.
Okay, motion to
So moved.
motion, second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
You're almost through with me. There's one more item here, which is Senator Communications, and their term originally was signed 2 years ago, approximately, with the option to renew 3 times. We've renewed once. This October would start the 3rd of potentially 4 terms. We had our marketing committee meeting last Thursday, and there was one motion that came out of it, and this happened to be one. that the committee was recommending to the TDC to retain Zender Communications for another year. That was a unanimous motion. They haven't even had a chance to make their report today, but that's a consideration for this body and for the BCC as well, the work that's been ongoing, and to not have to scramble if there's any questions or issues October 1, this would be the appropriate time to put that in front of you today.
I want to say that so far, from what I've seen, they've done a great job of getting us into these different markets in the social aspect of it. One of the surprises that I found out was when the Walton County, we have our beach flags, and it was on Pandora. That was one of the things that they helped inspire into that program. So anyway, my commends to you guys for just going outside the box. That's what we look for. So, do we have any recommendation? Motion to approve?
So moved.
Second? Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you much.
The next item is the FY 2015 budget. I'm not going to make you suffer line by line, but I will give you kind of the budgeting philosophy of the organization because it's changed a little bit. Most governmental organizations conservatively budget revenues and try to accurately budget their expenditures. What I found, and the bar chart kind of alluded to it that John showed you earlier, is for instance, this year we budgeted $14.5 million based on revenues last year of $18.5 million. So that's a little probably too conservative on the revenue side. So with the loss of the half cent, one of the objectives is to kind of balance out and mitigate those wild fluctuations in our marketing dollars and in our maintenance dollars and things like that. So that's why we're trying to develop a strategy. We're going to budget basically 90%, 95% of the revenues that we had last year with a 2% increase minus the half cent. So we started this in April, I believe, or March, and that was our philosophy when we started in March. We assumed that the half cent was going away because it was written in the law of sunset, and we figured a 2% increase for next year. It may be more, but if it's more, then that's good. That'll give us more opportunities or options. So what that did is this year you can see the budget was about 14.2 million. With the revised budget philosophy, next year it would be 16.9 million without the money that we were moving over from to the emerging markets campaign. So what we're projecting is a budget next year of $17.23 billion. You can see the line items, how it's broken down. If there's any questions, we gave you a comparison, what was budgeted this year versus what we're proposing to budget to the BCC next year. Where we are in the budget process is we have shipped this to the county's finance department. We will sit down with them and we will go line by line and justify doing what they call budget scrubs. And then we will go before the Board of County Commissioners and there'll be a couple of presentations, and then eventually they will approve a number. That will be our number. But this is, I just wanted to let y'all know what we were proposing for FY15 and see if you had any questions or see if y'all had any changes you wanted to recommend, because it's not too late to change now. Once we go to the Board of County Commissioners, pretty much they're the only ones that can change it.
I have a question more about the process.
Sure.
Maybe. And I'm just looking at administration because it's the first one and looking at, last year's budget or this year's budget compared to the proposed budget.
Right.
And I guess one of the things that it's hard to tell where we are in relationship to how did we do spending. I mean, if you can go back and sort through it, is there a way in this kind of process that we could say, okay, based on these line items, or this summation, if you will, that shows how we did. In other words, I'll just use an example. I'm looking at workman's comp, which is right up there.
Sure.
And you're showing workman's comp that cost budget going down. Is that based on this year's experience so far, or is this based on a different head count? I'm just curious about the process. At the same time, looking at the next item, which says professional consultants, the amount budgeted is double? Is that because we spent more this year, or because we have specific plans for next year to spend it, or, you know?
Well, go ahead, and I'll let Michelle come up and, Michelle, I'll let her answer some of the detailed questions, but to answer part of your question, I'll answer some of it, and I'll let Michelle answer the rest of it. If you go back under the financials into this will show you exactly how we're doing this year relative to what was budgeted this year. So that is part of the equation in developing next year's budget. If we're way over, why are we way over? And you can see there's comments out to the right on that sheet that will tell you why anything that has a variance, a large variance, we tell you why. On the professional services contract, there's actually a reason why that number goes up next year, because we took some things that were not previously there, but were in the budget, and put them underneath that. And so, you want to address?
Workman's comp is affected by the mod rate.
Yeah.
I just, looking at everything else increasing, and, you know, I understand, it depends on who and what you got employed, I understand that, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
But
just curious.
it's good because that means there's less injuries, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question. I
Yes, ma'am.
noticed that this coming budget year, y'all have included a contingency fee in each category.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that 10%? Is that 10%, or what percent is that, or how did you
It's
come up
about, it's, when we made some adjustment, it originally started out, I believe, they were all 10%. And then, as we went through the budget, some numbers went up, some numbers went down, to balance out that penny or those pennies and the first two pennies, it got adjusted. So it was a 10%. One of the things that I found out over the last year is there's not a week that doesn't go by that somebody with a great idea doesn't walk through the door. You know, we ought to landscape the entryways into the destination. We ought to do this, we ought to do that. And I turn around and I go, okay, do we have any money in the budget for that? Well, no, because that good idea just walked through the door. So I want to have some flexibility within the organization when people walk through and it's a really great idea and you all look at it, the BCC looks at it, or we look at it, it's within our spending authority in the staff, and say, yeah, maybe we should provide a little bit more money for this new event or whatever. So that's more of a budget spending philosophy, and that also gives us kind of that cushion on that cushion that we talked about earlier. So if we don't make our revenue numbers, well, we had some contingency, and that's where we eat it out of.
Because it looks
Ask
like,
for those ideas, we go to the DCC and ask for a expenditure in unanticipated revenue. Now we can actually go and ask for it at our.
right, because it looks like it's almost $1 million in contingency.
Right.
So that would represent one of the millions of dollars that went up from the 14.2 to 16.9. Another question, the BP funds that we got, I realized that we had to break them down and to put them in each penny tax. How do those show up in here?
They don't show up in the budget, they
Okay.
show up in your
Revenue.
revenue, I'm sorry, not your revenue, the
Reserve balance.
reserve balance.
Reserve balance.
Yeah. They show up on this sheet right here that was handed out.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that's where they have already been incorporated in there.
Yeah, along the same line of questions that Kurt Tate asked. Yeah, some of these things have doubled or tripled, and I guess, yeah, the question would be, how did y'all come up with that, like doubling the professional service, the professional consultant?
Okay, we'll give a couple of examples. The professional consultants put in Michelle. That's fairly straightforward.
We moved, under promotions, we had strategic planning for the consultant. We moved that over to professional services because actually you're going to contract with a professional consultant to do your strategic planning. So it's like a move within the budget. It really, nothing substantially doubled. It was just reallocating based on the new plan.
Okay, and then travel trade missions, I guess this is Pamela. It was about 200,000, it's gone up to about 800,000. Are we going to Europe or something, Pamela? or-
Actually,
And if so, can I go with you?
no, actually, those are some things that John is going to do for the emerging markets in that line item.
It goes back to that 1.42, which was in the half cent, which instead of abandoning those things, we we've sorted them through our standard pennies and managed to account for all of those without increasing the budget.
That's where the reserve transfer for emerging markets, that's the line item that will be submitted out of.
And to go back to the professional services, because the strategic planning was only 15,000 of the increase, we also took the audit cost, which was 20,000, which was in the previous budget, but underneath its own line, and we incorporated it into that line. So last year, the professional services under admin was just the attorney at 35,000. This year, we've taken the audit, because that's a professional consultant, and we've taken the strategic planner, which that's a professional consultant. And we've regrouped and tried to put things where they actually belong, not where we had necessarily historically put them.
Okay. And then one last question. Beach maintenance, I noticed that their budget went down, and it seems to me that if anything should go up, it's beach maintenance, because, and it looks to me like the gasoline is the major part of the decrease, and knowing what we know about gasoline,
Right.
I'm questioning how do we come with a lower
Sure.
one for gasoline?
And that goes back to my philosophy, we ought to put things where they belong. So we had everybody's vehicle, to include my vehicle,
Okay.
under beach maintenance.
Okay.
For maintenance and for gasoline and for services, and I said, no. My vehicle and the marketing, the 2 other admin vehicles, those costs ought to be out under the administrative pennies, not under beach maintenance shouldn't be paying for my gas.
Okay,
Even though I go
that's,
down there.
yeah, that explains that. That explains
Yes.
it. I just wondered if that was a question. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, well, they used to be responsible for all vehicles, so all, all our vehicles, and that, they shouldn't pay for that. It was my philosophy is, it ought to be paid for where it is,
In the category.
not where we've always had it.
Beach maintenance, admin, and marketing are the first 2 pennies, so it's still within the pennies, it's just allocated in the area that is
Well,
specified.
I saw it in the breakdown. I don't know if you call it the trial balance yourself, but where it listed the vehicles.
Mhm.
That was pulled out, and that was.
Right.
And code enforcement and beach ambassador is the same way, that's funded out of product development.
Right.
The other change in beach maintenance from last year to this year is that Western Lake Bridge, which was a reserve transfer to start construction of that showed up in last year's and not in this year's, so it will roll forward.
Michelle, get kind of picky, but as I was approving some of the bills a month or so ago, I recall it was about $3.61 a gallon we were paying, and I was asking Sharon, why are we paying what is in effect the retail rate when we should be getting gasoline at a slightly better rate than that? 360 is probably a going rate these days, 355, 360. And she was saying, no, we get it at a much better rate than that, but I wasn't seeing that on the numbers.
That would be the county, District 5, as far as we get our gas from them, and it's tax-free, so it should be at a discounted, or a bulk rate, actually. And we'd have to go back, depending on what they bought it at.
Oh, override, I didn't realize.
No, I didn't realize that either, but it shouldn't be.
It should be
Yeah.
a lower price,
Yeah.
because
Right,
of the
that's what I'm
tax
saying.
and a bulk rate, so we
Yeah.
would have to check and see
Yeah, we did
at what
budget.
price they bought, what was the price on the day the truck came and delivered us. It's gonna be-
Yeah, I mean, it was, as I recall, I wish I had it with me, as I recall, it was about $7,000 or $8,000. And it was at 361, 362 a gallon, which just struck me as being a little bit off, a wholesale rate being a more discount.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. We need to probably check into that with the county.
I think I know the reason, but I'll verify that, what I think is.
Verify before you tell us.
Well, I think it's because of the types of gasoline that because we have, it's premium.
Premium, okay.
Because we have those big trucks.
Because you have the big trucks that have to have they have to have it, and instead of having the cost of having 3 big tanks over there, or 2 big tanks, because they already have a diesel and they have a gas, and so they just use the one that everybody can use. So that may be it, but I'll verify.
Well, yeah, if it's premium, then it's probably 30 cents a gallon more at the pump anyway. Yeah, that would explain.
Yeah, I'm
Kurt, go ahead.
trying to look at the financials and then looking at the budgets. One of the, I'm looking like traveling per diem. And then I look over here and I see conferences travel. Are those the same thing?
TDC staff travel comes out of the travel per diem line. Anything to do with the conference, a training initiative comes out of the 4,000 account.
Okay, so.
That's registration, that's everything in that.
So, for example, looking at conferences travel, last year our budget was 21.5, this year's 35,850. Is that because we have conferences scheduled, we know we're going to them, or are we just saying, well, we're just gonna spend more money? Or, you know, because we think we're gonna go more? That's.
No, we actually have the conferences, and I can show you the backup, I didn't want to overwhelm you.
Okay.
We actually have conferences, and who's going to that conference, and when that conference is, and the projected cost. Now, sometimes it may be a little bit more, or a little bit less, but no, we developed
Detailed plan.
a detailed training plan and a detailed travel plan for conferences.
The people involved in this would be people that are in admin. They would not be, the marketing would come out of marketing, right? Or the marketing person going to a conference come out of this.
I believe we put all the training under that training budget, I don't believe.
Right. The admin and marketing shares the same account number, so it's
Yeah.
everybody.
But to your point, if we're going to Blogger for a brand activation mission, that would come out of that big number you saw show up in
Travel
travel
missions.
shows. If Travis was going to PRSA to get his annual accreditation, that would come out of the account that you.
And if Jim goes to Las Vegas, does that come out of what?
Travel and conference.
You know,
Actually, I am going in July.
I think that comes out of its own.
No, that's for the EMAI, that's my last CEME class, so classes. I do pay for part of it, but not.
We have a detailed line item book that we sat down with Mr. Miller last year and went through page by page. If any of y'all would like to request that, you're more than welcome.
All right. Any other questions?
Okay, we'll just keep you informed going forward on where we are in the budget process. Like I said, the next step for us is the scrubs, county finance department.
Do you know when that is, Jim?
I do not know that date. I'm not sure the scrub date has been
We haven't
set.
been notified of our structure.
Okay.
It's usually in June.
And one of the reasons I also wanted to let you know is because I know there'll be people in the county and they'll go, oh my God, they went from a 14.211999 budget to a $16.89 million budget, and they're just, wait, no, we actually had it in practical terms an $18.5 million budget last year. And when we needed to go back, we went back for excessive revenues, and that's not the way you should budget, because the BCC should approve our spending plan. Our spending plan ought to be as close to what our projected revenues are as possible. It shouldn't be nickel and diamond down. Plus, it takes a lot of staff time and a lot of BCC time if we go up there every single meeting and go, okay, now can we have 125,000 for this project or whatever.
So you're gonna meet with each commissioner and
Yes, ma'am.
explain all the details.
Yes.
All right. Do we have a recommendation for approval to the BCC?
Do we need a
You
recommendation?
don't
on
need
the-
one?
This is more informational.
Okay.
And to see if y'all have anything you specifically wanted to change. All right, and then Brad.
Thank you all for the opportunity to come and update you all. I am going to give part of the update. I'm actually going to save the best news for somebody else. And I want to start by introducing them. Howard Marlowe in the corner over there. Howard is with Marlowe and Company. There are Washington D.C. level lobbyists on the congressional side. Also, Daniel Green is one of our team members. And I'm going to leave the federal update this time to those guys. Just so you all know, especially for those that are new board members, Marlowe and Company's been working with the TDC since 2002. They do come around, we work very closely, we have meetings, the county, Jim goes up and meets with Marlowe and Company, the county uses Marlowe and Company also. And so with this opportunity for them to pass on good news, we wanted to have them down to give you straight from DC what's happening inside the loop. So that's the reason why we're really glad that they're able to make it. They've always been very supportive and helpful in these efforts. With that, I want to start by giving from the ground up perspective then. I usually start from federal to state to local, but we'll start from local on up. We're doing a lot of work on the local level. We have continued to have our committee meetings. We had a great one yesterday updating everybody. We have a public workshop tonight. We're trying to get the word out more and more on those public workshops and sharing that. It will be at 6 o'clock here in the TDC conference room. We're glad to be what I call back home, since I've been in this room for 14 years. But glad to be back home and having the workshop here. We think it's going to be a good one. It's great because we've now laid a good base of information. And tonight, we're going to give people that are starting to show up a little bit later in the game, which happens at every workshop, no matter what the topic is, we're going to give them a little update and then carry on into some of the good news and where we're going forward. And that's what I want to hit on today. We've got some big things that are happening. As far as permitting, we really have to look at our project as three big pieces. We're looking at permitting, construction easements, and then the federal side that, as I said, I'll leave to Howard and Daniel. On the permitting side, the Corps of Engineers, since it's a federal project, doesn't have to get a federal permit per se. But what they do is they work with the federal agencies that comment, the environmental agencies such as U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, National Marine Fisheries Service. That work has already been done and conducted by the Mobile District. They have their requirements by those agencies when we are to go forward with the construction of the project. However, they are still required to get a state permit. That's because of the Coastal Zone Management Act, long history, goes back to the 1970s. But in essence, they have to get a permit from the state saying that they're not doing anything contrary to the state's wishes. In the broadest terms, it's much more specific, making sure they meet the requirements with Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission and Florida DEP. That state permit is going to be applied for this week. All the work's been done. The district is literally routing it through the signature process in their group and the review by the attorneys. And so they expect either later this week, maybe first of next week, to do the state permitting, get that ball rolling. And I think that's a huge milestone that we need to think about, because we more or less have a federal permit because it's a federal project. So getting that state permit going, as I mentioned in a previous update, Jim and I participated in a pre-application meeting with the DEP a few months ago now, and no big issues came out of that review or those comments. So that's great. We think we're starting off on a good foot, and we'll keep you abreast of how that state permitting continues on. The second issue.
When you're saying you guys are here, you're not anticipating any snags or any issues received to the state.
Yeah, the good news
Does it
about
help having the federal permit first, obviously, like that?
well, that helps. The other thing that helps a lot is we went through this process back in 2007 when we thought we were going to do a state-local project. That didn't work out because of permitting issues and challenges as far as what we could actually build. So a lot of the information that we submitted in 2007 is being reused. So it's already been reviewed. The sand source information, we're putting sand on a sandy beach. There's no coral reefs, the endangered species. There's a few new regulations, but primarily it's monitoring. Making sure when we put sand on the beach, you don't affect shorebird nesting. So it's little things that can all be worked in. There's no overriding issue that DEP is expecting or that we would expect, because we've already kind of gone through this process a little bit. And as you said, getting the compliance or the certification through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, you would think the Florida Fish and Wildlife would be in the same area. And already have that in the National Marine Fisheries Service, you would think, once again, that Florida DEP and U.S. Fish and Wildlife can be able to support. So we're not seeing that as a big hang-up, but we do. It's still a process. Once you submit the permit, and then you have to submit everything they want, then they deem it what they call deemed complete. Once they do, they have 30 days to review it. At the end of that 30 days, they have to either put out a notice that they're going to award the permit, deny the permit, or request additional information. Typically, you get a request for additional information, which comes back to the Mobile District and us as the local sponsor. We submit additional information. Once they get that in, they can then deem it complete, and typically things move along. So you're always going to have at least one RAI, but they've done a much better job in that the new rule, which is different from the first project, if they don't point out an issue that needs a request for additional information in number 1, and you go through 1 and you address all those, they can't do new issues in 2 or 3 or 4. In the Western Walton County project, there were some issues where they did project 1, the RAI came out and we had this list of issues to address. Taylor Engineering submitted the information, we addressed all those, and then magically these new issues started popping up. And that's kind of moving the goalposts. They do not do that anymore, it's not allowed. If it doesn't come out in RA 1, it can't come out in RA 3. And so that's going to be a nice change, and we'll continue to push through that. But we've got a good team working on it. Mobile District. Taylor Engineering still supports that effort with all of our old information, so we don't see that as a huge hang-up, but it will definitely be something that we have to work through. The other issue that we need to work through, which is more of the local responsibility, which is the construction easement. Once again, I know we've talked about these a number of times. They were initially released to the public in December. and they've been on the website since December. Revisions were made to those December ones. We had a public workshop in February, got comments, revisions were made. We released a new version again in April at a workshop. Since then, we have had revisions made, and we have, as of May 1, the newest, freshest version of the construction easement on the website. That document is a legal document that allows us to go onto a person's property and build the beach and dune. It has nothing to do with ownership, has nothing to do with uses of the beach, it's just being able to physically construct. We will be, as I said, that's been on the website for a month. We have another workshop tonight, as I mentioned earlier, where we'll barely dive into that if we need to, but we hope and expect, I should say I hope and expect that review process is coming to an end very shortly. Because now we're getting a state permit, Howard's going to give us some good news on where the project is federally, and so this ball needs to get rolling, and it's been going well, but we're going to move that along. The final portion that I want to point out as far as what we're going to be working on is the funding aspect. Once again, not getting into the federal, as I said, and we've reported and was said again today, we do have the beach nourishment reserves, we do have the third cent for beach nourishment to pay the non-federal local share. Yes, we are pursuing 20% of the project funding from the state, but as Jim pointed out, it is competitive, and we have to be prepared to not get that $12 million. And unfortunately, just yesterday, the governor signed the appropriations bills to the state legislature at $47.3 million for beaches statewide. Sounds like a chunk of money. It is. The statutory requirement is $30 million, so they actually went above what the statute requires, which was great. But they're very competitive projects. We just received this morning the new information to apply for the money that would be issued and awarded as of October 2015. So we're getting ready to start that grant process. And TDC will be working it through the grants department of the county and the county commission and all of that. So all those balls, once again, are continuing on and moving forward. And with that, I would like to ask Howard to step up and let you know about our project. We are still looking at the same project, roughly $60 million for the initial nourishment, 4 nourishments totaling about $100 million. So with that general overview, have Howard give you an update, and then either one of you to answer your questions.
Thank you, members of the council, Commissioner Meadows. Pleasure to be here. Before I talk about the beach, Mr. Urban was talking about Love Field before, and that becoming open. Our firm was responsible for starting that, not working for the county. It was a number of years ago when the so-called Wright Amendment, which is the wrong amendment, closed down in essence, your access to it. So we're delighted to see that finally that process got through, and that you have some competition, hopefully benefit from it here. The core process, our firm, Daniel and I do a number of things, but one of the things that we have the pleasure of doing is working on coastal projects, beach projects specifically, and with the Corps of Engineers. And the process, very simply for those who are new to it, is that you get a study resolution. You get a study out of that. The Corps of Engineers is very careful in how it spends taxpayers' money. So it's the only agency that I know of at the federal government that has to have a positive benefit to cost ratio. That is, for every dollar spent of federal taxpayers' dollars, they have to get more than $1 back in terms of storm damage reduction benefits. And that is, it's just marvelous. Now, the good part of that is that you do know as taxpayers you're getting that benefit. The bad part is it takes a long time for them to come through their studies. We have gone through, as Brad said, we started in 2002. Before, we had a great partnership working with Brad Pickle all these years. And what we've done is gotten to the point where the study got completed. When it gets completed, it goes through a review process, which is very rigorous, and eventually going through what they call a Civil Works Review Board. A lot of folks who are generals and others, and yes, the Corps of Engineers is run by the Army, but they have a number of great, also in addition to the Army engineers, a number of great Civil Works engineers there. They approve the project, the Chief of Engineers signs off on it, and now what we've gotten to is beyond that point. We've gotten to a federal authorization. We're now an approved project by the federal government. And that is a great accomplishment after all these years. Approved gives us the right to move forward and start to ask for money for construction. We've got a stage that's going before that, and that stage is some planning, engineering, design that is in process already and needs to be completed. That sets out the amount of sand and the number of things that Brad is a better expert on than I am. We will be with you all that way. We will be with you to make sure that that money gets appropriated to you. Is that going to be easy? No. But I always look back to the fact that every time I say it's going to be extremely hard, then Congress comes through. You've all heard that there's no congressional earmarks, but there are presidential earmarks. The president has always earmarked the Corps of Engineers budget. Congress used to be able to plus up specific projects. It can plus up, and it did this past year. The president recommended $40 million of beach projects and studies. The Congress put in what amounts to a total of $155 million total. Now, I can't guarantee that's going to happen this year, but I can guarantee that Congress has a real desire on the coast to understand and to put money behind its understanding that these projects benefit not just your local economy, because from the federal point of view, they want to see that it benefits the national interest. And of course, you're generating a lot of tax dollars at the federal level, businesses and jobs, but it's also the storm damage reduction. And y'all are more familiar than I want to talk about the potential for storm damage here on the coast. So I'm delighted to come back and to be able to say to you that y'all are to be congratulated, because you have to have the persistence and the willingness to go through that 12 or more years of process just to get to the point where you have a right to ask for money for construction of that project. But you know, one, that you have a well-designed project, and two, it's one that's passed all the tests that are required for demonstrating to federal taxpayers and to your taxpayers as well that this is a worthwhile project, a good investment. And in fact, we know from history throughout all of the work that's been done on the coast, we know that you get about $3 to $4 back. The federal taxpayer gets $3 to $4 back. And the federal government, we did calculations, that's $3 to $4 back for every dollar invested. We know that the federal government actually gets about $300 billion a year in revenues coming from its coastal counties. So they're not doing so bad, you know. It's a good investment on their part. Does anybody have any questions that I can answer? I know it's a complicated process, but I want to thank you very much for giving Marlin Company an opportunity over all these years to work. Delighted to, we met with Jim up in Washington. We're delighted to have the support of the commission, commissioners, so that it's been something that's been a great partnership. And we thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
And as always, for more information, we do have our website, protectwaltoncountybeaches.com. In addition to static information, we have links to reports showing the justification project, maps, all that, and there is an Ask a Question opportunity that is being taken advantage of by people to ask questions. If you want to direct people to that website, that is our #1 vehicle for getting information out.
Protect Walton.
www.protectwaltoncountybeaches.
Okay.
www.protectwaltoncountybeaches.com.
Okay.
And it's got, and we just updated with the new FAQ, frequently asked questions, all kinds of good stuff.
Okay.
Brad, for the benefit of those new on the board, is the bottom line of this, now that this is approved for the federal government, once we get this beach renourishment, what happens after that if we do have another storm? We guarantee that we handle the next so many years.
Sure, yeah, the congressional authorization that we got is actually for 50 years, so it's not just for the initial restoration. The current expectation is that we cover the initial restoration plus 4 more nourishments over that 50-year time frame. Could be more, could be less, depending on how the beach performs. What it is we know how much sand is now needed to protect upland structures and upland properties. Now we know what we have to maintain. But in addition, once we're a federal project, if you use Hurricane Sandy as the best recent example, Those are federal projects that were impacted by the storm, a number of those were. So then there's usually supplemental dollars that are put in place by Congress that are funneled into the Corps to do those federal projects. Huge benefit here. If we don't have a federal project, we have to work with FEMA to try to get FEMA dollars and work through a FEMA process where we have to do 90% of the work. We did that after the storms, made 405 and all the walkover construction. Walkover construction was easy. However, federal process, now that if we get in with the Corps, it comes out of a different pot of money through the public law, different public law dollars, different appropriation dollars, where once again, the Mobile District, in our case, and the Corps of Engineers would negotiate to how that money's spent. We would work through Marlowe and Company and other communities to get that disaster appropriation dollars allocated. But it comes much more simply in our world as far as the management of how that's all done.
Thank you, Brad.
Yes, sir.
Brad, going back to the restoration that was done, what, 6, 7 years ago?
2006.
The western part of the beaches.
Yes, sir.
What is done to monitor how that beach maintains itself? And what is done to kind of re-restore that beach, if you would?
Sure.
In other words, you're not just leaving it there and moving to the east. I hope you're looking at the, what, 6, 8 miles that were done originally?
In Western Walton County, it's 5.22 miles in the desert. There's annual monitoring that's done. That's actually getting ready to start. We usually do it around the June, July timeframe every year so that we have comparable numbers. Monitoring done across the beach to measure, figure out how much sand is moved in and out of the beach. As of last year's monitoring, we estimate approximately 97% of that sand is between the top of the dune where it's placed to the offshore area to the sandbars. That's kind of what we call the beach. A lot of people think the beach is where you lay your towel. But it really extends from the top of the dune to where we place sand all the way down to about 20 feet of water depth. And we monitor that sandbox, and as I said, over 95% of the sand's still been there. And we monitor that to that because when we start seeing that it loses its storm protection value, i.e. there's not enough sand there to protect up those structures, you would want to be planning for a future nourishment. So that is completely monitored. We also not only do it with beach surveys, we also monitor through aerial photography. The good thing about that, using a hurricane again, the reason why we like to do it in June is, knock on wood, it's going to hurt me, but typically storms are a little later. And if we can, when we can demonstrate to FEMA that we have an engineered beach that we are maintaining and monitoring, and what that beach was before a storm, we can go out immediately after storm, survey the same location, show the volume of sand that's lost, and get FEMA dollars to replace that sand.
Has there been any of that done in the past few years?
We haven't needed to.
Okay.
No, we've the project in Western Walton County is far exceeding its design parameters. It's been a complete success, enormous success.
It's also like you have to take the average, it's like 9 years average of the mean high tide line. And
That has to do with the erosion control line?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just talking about the ownership of where the state property versus upland property.
By the way, it's nobody in this room, including myself, is going to understand it.
Yeah.
Because it's pretty complicated.
But the beach is healthy. There are definitely hot spots, that properties that we want to monitor more closely, getting back to your point, where commercial growing a little faster than other areas, but generally speaking, the project is outstanding. And even in those areas, it's still exceeding performance expectations.
I think 1% of that lost sand is in my house.
I mean, the only reason I bring that up, and ironically enough, after Memorial Day, you have your beach, and you set up your beach chair umbrellas, and you rent them, and the guest comes up to you and goes, hey, I just paid X number of dollars, and I get this person sitting in front of me. Our attendants go and politely ask them to move, and they bring up this is public beach, and so then you have to figure out your mean high tide line, where it's measured.
It's a complex.
So it's pretty complex.
Brad, are you still, are these meetings every, first Tuesday of every month? Are you skipping some months or every Tuesday?
It's every other month. It's
Every other
it's
month.
right after this meeting.
Okay.
What we do is we do the beach management committee the afternoon of the first Monday. Then we have this TDC meeting the morning of the first Tuesday.
Okay.
And then we do the evening of the first Tuesday. So we're hoping that between afternoon, morning, and evening, if somebody has an interest in learning more about the project, in addition to all the static means and ask a question and the phone, we hope that we are getting the word out.
Okay.
So the next one would be in August. Yes, ma'am.
Great, thank you. Question?
Are we far enough along in the process to anticipate when we might see the project start?
It's contingent on three tent poles. The first one is working through the state permitting process. However long that takes is when we can go forward on the state level. The second issue is construction easements. However, how soon we can secure construction easements dictates when we can start putting sand on the beach. The third issue being state, local, and federal funding. Local funding is fairly secure. We've talked about that through beach nourishment funding and the extra allocation that may be needed to cover the state funding. We're applying for state funds, and federal funding, as Howard just mentioned, that we had to wait for the project to be federally authorized, which it was in that Water Resources Development Act that you may have seen the press release about. So now we go after construction funding. Long story short, the earliest that we are even eligible to get federal funding, and that's going to drive the train a lot because we can't do a federal project without federal partners. The earliest that money can come in is October 15.
Of this year?
15, not 14.
Of
That would be the earliest. Now, I am not standing here today saying this is going to be built. So if you're asking me what the longest pole in the tent is right now, it's that one. It's trying to get those federal dollars. It could easily, if we start seeing the federal dollars come into play, the longest tent pole could become state permitting. But we're trying to, our goal is, and the way that we've been tasked is we task the Mobile District, get the permit as soon as possible. Now that we have a federal project, the county is going to move forward on the construction easements. And then that leaves the county and the county for the TDC. And that leaves the county, Marlowe and Company, and the Corps of Engineers to pursue federal funding. So we all three work on the third issue. But we're just pushing. The biggest issue for us, and what I continue to beat on, and I will, is that we are now going to be moving forward with those construction easements very shortly, and getting that word out. We'll have mapping programs and all kinds of stuff showing where it lands. It's going to be a big process, but we did it with the first one, and it's seen very well.
Great. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Good morning, council members and commissioners. I'm Lauren Wilson. I'm the account supervisor with Sender. I'm just going to provide a quick overview of what have been a very busy 2 months. First, we'll go over some media results. The results from our spring co-op banner performance are in. They were really great. We actually doubled the amount of guaranteed click-throughs for our partners, which made selling digital co-op for 2014-15 a lot better with our sales pitch. And our brand interactive performance for April continued to perform well, especially in the mobile arena. Co-op leads continue to be healthy for April. And we usually don't report on SEM or search engine marketing, but I did want to point it out this month. We set an internal goal for ourselves this year of having a click-through rate of 1.6%. So we started at 1.3 in October, and as you can see, we've exceeded that for the past 3 months, and actually May is looking even stronger. So this is the search terms that we purchase with Google and Yahoo and Bing. So we're really excited about this performance. And added value, we're up to over $765,000. One of the coolest things was that Audubon Magazine saw our new print campaign and approached us and said, we'd love for your ad to be in our publication. We'll give you a free insertion for a full page. So, I mean, that was unsolicited completely. So we were really excited about that. Food Network Magazine also did a really fun thing. They had branded macaroons that they gave out at a food truck in New York. So, and there was some signage. So that was.
Lauren, excuse me, what do you think they were looking for at Audubon?
I think, well.
Yeah, they came here and visited at their sales team, and obviously they're trying to demonstrate to us that they think that they're a vehicle that should be considered. So there's some play involved, but they truly were blown away by some of our new creative, which you all have seen samples of, and said, this is exactly the type of stuff we want to be in our publication. Would you consider letting us run that? And so we gave them 2 of our pieces of creative. One is the paddle board going into the sunset, very gorgeous things. Two treatments for them to choose from, and we'll find out which one they pick. But
what's their demographic?
It's high. I mean, it's an affluent publication. And again, back to our eco, working on pitching stories and trying to get travel writers.
That's huge.
But that was quite a nice gift. It'll come with a sales pitch, in 6 months. But that's normal, and again, if we're talking to the right publications, these sort of things do happen, and we are very fortunate with the attention that we get.
Right. John mentioned the co-op plan. Our co-op sales opportunities went on sale 2 weeks ago. The sales period concluded last week. We've offered 126 different opportunities for co-op partners. We sold 89% of them, so that stipulates that they won't go back on sale, but we are in the process of getting signed contracts for all the partners. So that's concluded, and we deem that a success since we don't have to go back on sale. And as John mentioned, here are our brand print creative. These are finalized. These are actually the two that we submitted to Audubon to select from. So we have a paddleboarder, we have Brighton Beach State Park, and then we have some of the more classic beach shots. And we also updated our meetings and weddings ad. We used an existing photograph for meetings, but changed the headline, and we used existing photography and headline, but put it more in the style. So we're looking at possibly doing new ads for meetings and weddings in fiscal year 2015, but we have a really good solution for brand consistency moving forward. And I said when we were doing this, the TV shoot would be completed today. We've been fighting weather issues on the TV shoot from the first time when, which was in late April, early May, when there was all the flooding, and then this week. But we are confident that by Thursday afternoon we will have a complete shoot. We'll have a rough cut of the TV early July. So at the August council meeting, you'll be seeing it, and it goes live in September. So we're really excited about that. The print brand will go live July 1st, as well as banner ads, and then we'll cycle into co-op new ads in the new fiscal year. Emerging markets, I know there's been a lot of discussion about the missions that we go on, but we had 2 in May. Tim joined us in Nashville for steeplechase. It was a beautiful day. It was supposed to be a complete rain out, and ended up skies clear, the sun came out. If you're not familiar with steeplechase, it's an ultra fluid event in Nashville every year. And we had a lot of South Walton signage throughout. You'll see this. This is a speaker hanging up in the air. You can't tell it here, but it's 18 feet tall. So you could see this from the entire grounds events. And then we also had signage. This is in front of the box seats. The average household income of a box seat holder is $277,000. So it was really displayed right in front of our core target audience. We also had golf cart signage. Visitor guides were placed in box seat gift bags. We had our entire booth set up, as well as lifestyle experiential elements. Strat Clampett played. We had Southern Fashion House display their design. We had Chef Johnny Earls giving out food. We had a big social media component with it. We ran a contest, and we had about 1,500 engagements on that day using hashtag South Walton and hashtag Tennessee Steeplechase. Here are just a couple of samples. And we also ran corresponding paid media during the leading up to the event and the day after the event. So we definitely saw a bump in Nashville visitation to the website. Typically, Nashville averages number 6 or number 7 for our cities. April, we saw it as number 2, and in May, during the event, we saw it as number 4. So we're still waiting for Steeplechase to get some of the results, but we're at 2.5 million impressions for the event so far.
Warren, just to comment on that, it was, there was attendance. It doesn't look like it there, but there's like, I think we had 125,000 people show up to this thing. So they had golf carts. I wish they had, there's a picture of that golf cart up there. Yeah, with South Walton. They had, I don't know, dozens and dozens of those driving around with our logos on it. So, and the interesting thing, I was kind of hanging around the booth there too and talking to people. A lot do come down here, but there are, my understanding is some numbers. I was talking to somebody up there. They said that there's like 85 new people moving into that area a day. About 35,000 a month. So that right there, and some of the people that talked to us, this lady and her children were there, and they were in the booth there. They were from New York. They just moved down. Very fluent people. So they had never heard of the beaches. I gave them a packet, just, it was exciting to see that they haven't heard, they can come down and check it out and see what's going on, but they were very impressed. So, very well done too. It was a lot of activity. Thank you.
So that was May 10th. The very next weekend, we turned around and headed to Miami for Blocker Food. It's a female blogger conference, and this was specializing on food and travel bloggers. So we had our booth set up on the trade show floor, and we definitely had the best giveaways out of any sponsor. Chef Michael Guerra from The Pearl created handmade sea salts. You'll see right there, but we had chargers, bags. People love them, as you can see from this woman. Very excited about her bag. And so we had great engagement on the trade show floor. And then on Friday night, we held a South Walton Culinary Showcase at the Perez Art Museum, Miami. It was an exclusive event for 50 bloggers that were handpicked. We also had some media. There was a complete waiting list. We had every seat filled. We had 60 seats, and I think there were 63 people there. So trying to figure out, but we brought out 3 different chef ambassadors. Only actually 2 could make it, but we had Ricky Fannin from Chase 850 sampling his beverages, Justin Gaffrey, one of the former artists of the year, doing interactive painting, which was real. The bloggers loved that. Here's some of the chefs and their dishes, and as you can see, people are capturing that and doing a lot of social content. We had an amazing social media results from that, and I say amazing, but we actually did monitored buzzwords from Sentiment for Twitter. Amazing was the word that was mentioned most in relationship to South at the event. So can't really beat that. We also did a contest during the conference, and it was called Post Perfect, and we gave away a trip. But you had to post a picture and use hashtag Blocker Food and hashtag South Walton. In a day and a half, we had 395 pictures posted. So we were really excited about that performance, and you can see people had a great time at the event and the booth. We had the most Twitter mentions of any sponsor. We had 100% positive sentiment on social media, and we were the most talked about party at the conference. We're still waiting on impressions from Blogger, because as part of our sponsorship, we had 5 blogging ambassadors who posted about their experience. We should have those mid-June, but right now we're sitting at 3 million impressions before we even get those in, and waiting for people to block those. So that's a good segue into social media. Right now we are at almost 68,000 Facebook likes. That's 171% increase since October. And Instagram has really been performing well. We crossed the threshold of 2,000 in Miami, which we were really rooting for. And here you can just see the Facebook growth. The thing about Facebook, the more people who like it, it sort of has a snowball effect, and more people are sharing it. So we've really seen a healthy growth this fiscal year. This is page performance ranking. This takes into account growth, but also engagement, likes, and shares. These are some of our competitors that we monitor against. This dotted line is the average, which is 28%. We're at 81%. So the only competitor that we're really monitoring that is in our league is Visit HomePad. And the last thing I wanted to touch on were some digital enhancements that we've done the past couple months. If you haven't seen this, I would highly recommend you go to the website and click on Find Your Perfect Beach over the icon. But this is, we're calling it the Perfect Beach Filter Finder. You can click on these different icons based on what you like, and then all the beach neighborhoods rearrange and grow or shrink based on your preferences. So it's a really interactive tool to truly find your perfect beach, and we're working on making that even more prominent on the homepage right now.
That from user testing was honestly the #1 piece of feedback. You have a beautiful site, I love this, but there's, where do I go, how do I start, I'm not sure where I should be looking, and so this was a solution based on feedback from consumers.
And just to, I'll mention one thing, invitation being the sincerest form of flattery. Visited Florida, came out with this
Last
week. once they saw it, they went and basically, now any, or I won't say any beach, because it's only 10 of our beaches in their queue, but they've got hundreds of beaches in Florida, and you can pick what you want to, you want seclusion or you want hyperactivity, and it will do that. So they did a great job and continue to set the standard, not only for here, but for the state.
Also, one of the things that we've learned through some more in-depth metric analysis of the website is that we get a great amount of visitors to our website from the sweeps initiative. However, a lot of them enter the sweeps and then leave. So we found that that was an opportunity to have them learn more about the destination. So a really simple solution, and thanks for entering, we just had a thank you. We've added a couple links on how to find your perfect beach, how to find accommodations. So we just did that this past month, so we're interested to see if that helps what's called the stickiness of the site, increasing the time spent on site, which is always a health metric of destination websites. And we actually released an update for the app 2 weeks ago. I think it went live in the Apple Store. One of them, the biggest thing, was to update everything to be compliant with iOS 7, the new Apple operating platform, but also to increase the loading time and better organize events. So now you can see today's events and then upcoming events. Before they were sort of all lumped together, so now they're better organized. So if you haven't downloaded the update, please go to the App Store and do so. That's all we have, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much.
Very good.
While we're doing a string of consultants here, we have our research consultant, Philip Downs from Kerr Downs. I'm going to have him come up and we'll finish the trifecta here of trying to go to the director of because he's got a few words just he'd like to update you on.
Thank you, Jim. Good morning, everyone. I'm Philip Downs from Kerr Downs Research, and I'll be very brief. We're just kicking off our market research study. Our first study will be the visitor tracking study. We're working with many of the properties in the area who are sharing their email databases with us. We'll be sending that survey out in the next week or so. And that's the study that looks at the people who are coming here, looks at where they're from, how long they stay, how much money they're spending in market, and what they like about the area, obstacles to coming, likelihood of coming back. We'll be documenting all of that and sharing it with you folks. We'll also be giving tailored dashboards back to the properties like Gary's property, we're working with us. After that, we're going to be doing some event research that Jim's talked about, and we'll also be doing some research projected at potential visitors to see how we can get information that will help the visitor agency bring even more people to it. So any questions about where we're headed?
Good. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. And now to director updates.
Yes, I'm gonna try to rapid fire a few of these. However, I think this first one may take a little bit more time. You recall last time we were in front of you, we brought a whole variety of logo treatments, scenarios, concepts. We've been at this for several months. Our last mission was to listen to what the marketing community committee said, what y'all said, all the considerations, and try to start focusing this down to a path that we can take. So we have done that. We visited with the marketing committee. Can you help John reboot that? That's mid-page for some reason. Y'all know that we were 3 umbrella beaches for a while. We've been Visit South Walton for almost 4 years now with the script. Let's see if this works a little better. You'll have to help me, John. It looks like it's struggling with the PDF.
It's the resizing of the PDF.
So we've got 3 treatments here. Those were the 3 most commonly discussed icons and the 3 most commonly discussed fonts that we've heard. And so we try to put those in one place. We've got variations with Pantone, variations with display. So we'll just click through these. The first one is drum roll. The single umbrella, and again, all these fonts are very solid fonts so that you don't have any potential degradation of fine accents. So we can just go through all the umbrellas, we can scroll through them, you see different color treatments. Continue.
John, can I just ask
Yes,
a quick
ma'am.
question while you're going through them? Have we checked to see if anybody else in the country is using any of these? Because it looks familiar to me, but.
Well, and one of the reasons, if you remember, that the Horizon one did not make the top 3 most talked about is that everybody was quite convinced that they'd seen it elsewhere. So if we get to a point where we think that we've got a viable choice, and you're going to go into all the trademarking and registration, research, and copywriting, and all of that.
Okay.
So this would be the full-blown with Visit. You wouldn't always use Visit. We talked about this before. You've got reverses. All these things are very important because the treatments are going to be different depending on where they appear, digital, on solid backgrounds, on photos. And you recall we had some on advertisements for you last time. But single colors, more of a block when you don't have enough landscape room. Again, the reverse fold. You've got the smile, if you recall, with the Find Your Perfect Peach, which was found to be a little bit more friendly. Again, using the same yellow that you saw in the umbrella as a reverse. Tonal colors are possible. Again, smiles and blocks and full and variations that wouldn't all be available to us if we chose a direction. We would get brand standards that were very specific on where you use and what you could do, and limited flexibility, because obviously this needs to be immediately recognizable. Didn't I see that in yellow? No, you can't have that kind of confusion. We would have to pick a direction. But this gives you an idea on what a single umbrella logo with the icon can do. Yes, sir.
I noticed a lot of these were pastel type colors. Is that what we're leading to, or something a little more that sticks out? 'Cause
It
I like,
is,
you know, they just blend in with.
It's an easy way to try to denote a refined brand, an affluent brand. We're not screaming and yelling at them. It's not the, Kellogg's red. And all those colors, of course, are supposed to affect human reaction. Yellow is soothing and red is aggressive. And so all of these are meant to, this is a perfect example. We moved into the chair. These would be color tones that would come from our waters and our environment. The skies and the soft yellows would be in the sunset. So all of those things were literally picked, color picker, from our landscape and tried to then be put into a Pantone family. So you can see it's the same treatments depending on Visit, depending on reverses. So this is again the Adirondack chair and or the sunset. All of these have had constructive criticism heaped on them, but these have also been the 3 that have received the most positives, upsides, and pros. And so that's how these made the current final list. Again, the tonal colors and reverses.
Go ahead. I do have a comment, but
Yeah, by all means.
And I think, and 3 people have said this to me, so I'll say it. To me, it seems like it's too soft. It's like, I almost want to say, gosh, it's boring, it's soft, it doesn't say anything to me except.
The chair one itself or all 3?
Well, I think the colors, I know what y'all are trying to do, but everybody that I've only talked to 3 people, so not everybody. But the 3 people that I've talked to, I didn't say anything at all. I said, what do you think about this? And I said, well, it's kind of vanilla. It's so soft, it's so squishy that it doesn't excite me. It doesn't do anything for me. Does anybody else feel like that?
Well, I was not one of the 3, but I would agree with you. It does look a little soft, but just in terms of the choices that are up there, the simpler one, such as this, seems to have more appeal to me than the one with the smaller writing underneath. It looks a little too cluttered. I like the simplicity. My preference would be the umbrella rather than the Adirondack chair, but I think Cindy has a great point. It may be just a little too soft. We don't want the Kellogg red, I grant that, but
just something with that jumps off the page a little bit more.
And keep in mind, if we can get to a point where we feel like we have a path that we can go down, the very next mission would be to take these concepts and put them on ad slicks, put them on business cards, put them on shirts, put them on hats, so that you can see how that is in real life. And that does make a huge difference.
But
Yes.
that would be on the bottom of my list, right? But that just is too much.
Yeah, that was my point earlier, John, is just, if I'm going through magazines sometimes, and, you don't stop each page, you kind of scan through, but something jumps out at you, and that looks, there's sexiness to it, but the color just kind of blends in, you may not catch it. And, red, I don't want them to get all angry or whatever, rip the page out, but I just
Well,
make something happen.
And keep in mind, no matter what you have with the color, our color today, with the turquoise and the orange, on certain applications, it's almost impossible to get that to look pleasant. So when you think about our ad treatments and our digital, I mean, there would be very few plain white. Your business card would be the most common example, but in anything that was in print, it's not about the colors of the logo so much. It's very important, but it's the page stopping hero image that's on there. So does this logo or that logo complement the sunrise or the soft tones of the beach and the water? So that's some of what went into it.
Just one other comment too, and I love Seaside. This to me says Seaside. I'm at Seaside. When I think about South Walton River beaches, I think of brilliant blues. The sky, the water, that unbelievable emerald green. I just don't get that from the colors. I do like number one, with the umbrella and such and the thing, but I'm just kind of feeling that's nice. But it doesn't really inspire me.
Understand. And this would be the third version. We kind of coined this as Sunwave, which is in some people's mind is an SW reflected, a little more abstract, or it's the sky and the water, or it's yeah.
Excuse me, John?
Yes.
I do recall, back in the April meeting.
That's what I
I recall in the April meeting, when we talked about these, and we went around the members, everybody picked the umbrella, and then everybody picked, I believe, the font on the kind of the block font on the Adirondack chairs, so to kind of merge the two. So I'm kind of wondering, why are we reverting back to three choices if we've kind of...
Well, we also had a significant amount of feedback from the marketing committee, which wasn't necessarily the same as in the TDC. So we tried to listen to everything and bring back those. Now, I think actually in the marketing committee meeting, that same point was made. We love the font for number 2 version. Could we see that on number 1 insignia? And those are easy things to do. We were trying to get from 10 options down to 3 to hopefully, because getting to 1 is 100 times more difficult than getting from 9 to 3. So, but that's all feasible. If this body's convinced, oh my God, that font would.
Yeah, I just hope we're not still doing this in 2 years, that the time is.
It is difficult, and here's the other that's just personal nature. When you see it for the first time, you got new car smell, enthusiasm. When you see it the second time, you start going, I'm not as sure about that now. And so we ran into that with the marketing committee. They did not make a recommendation out of the 3. They said we defer and want the TDC and the BCCSO to see all 3.
Yeah, I tend to agree. That we had some combinations that I thought were a little bit more exciting. And I understand what you're saying.
So these were the top 3 identified: the Sunwave, the chair, and the umbrella, with just a palette of treatments.
John, do you have the slides that there's all 3 of them next to each other?
Don't think we do in this deck. But we can certainly jump backwards. We're just about to the end of this.
That's it.
Okay. So if you'd like to see 1 and 2 just as the first slides, just zip back to slide, whatever was.
To kind of force the thing, just in terms of the symbol itself, I think what Gary was saying is our sense was last time, and I feel now that the umbrella is probably the top choice in terms of a symbol. Now, how you put it together with the script and wording and so forth, that's a different question. But of the 3 symbols, that seems to be what we preferred last time, and what I prefer right now.
That's good. That's what we were looking for is, and again, you know, you would have an option to give some specific direction or even a motion as far as if you wanted some action on it, so.
Now again, I'll express my view. That to me is clean, simple, and maybe the colors are not the right colors, but in terms of the visual part of it, I like the simplicity of it. That is a little too colored.
And to Gary's point, if we can show the second version, the chair, that font has some specifics. The N has been altered by us, it's not an existing font. And the H has been altered by us to raise those intersections. And again, you do not want a font that you can go to Word and pick it. This is all custom stuff, which is again back to the color. You really don't want that to be a default color that any person can emulate. You're trying to have some character there. But
Just one note on the color. All of the colors have been eye dropped from existing photography of the destination. So it's actually colors that have been found in nature in South Walton and used in all of these exhibitions.
And of course, on the screen, they're about as flat as you would ever see them versus if you were looking at the actual monitor or you were looking at a print. So there's a little bit of...
They're definitely making me relaxed.
I think that might be something else, I'm not sure.
I think they're clearly more legible, but I think part of the problem the marketing committee had the other day, and I'm speaking from my personal feelings and experience now, I don't think any of them warrant the amount of money it's going to take to change, and I don't think it warrants, I don't think that, for me personally, that's not the look, none of those are the look of South Walton. And I know a lot of time and effort has been put into this, and I don't want it to take 2 years, but when you're looking at this in a year from now, on the side of the, billboard or wherever, do any of these really jump out and grab you and say, that is South Walton? And that's what it should do.
Yeah, I agree totally. I think it's too mellow. It's, we don't want to bring people here and bore them to death. We want them to say, gosh, I want to go there because, man. But
I want them to have a license tag on the front of their car. They all used to come to get the umbrella ones. Everybody had to have one of those license tags. So, something like that. Like that. No.
I think you're on the right track. So, I think South Walton is soothing. I think it is not Panama City Beach that's bam, bam, bam. I think South Walton does have a calming effect. And I like the first, with the umbrella, I like the contrast of the yellow. Maybe the colors can be tweaked a little bit from the contrast, but I think that's beautiful. And I do like in some act, I understand what Art is saying about simplicity. I like simple block letters, clean, I really like that. But I think that the smile on the bottom is kind of like a wink and a nod. It's kind of cute in some applications. I don't find it particularly confusing, but I think we are on the right track with this, and I do like the second font.
Can we get the people in the audience to just raise their hand? Do you think that we're headed down the right track with this? Raise your hand if you think so. You can't be one of them. You can't be the designer. You can't be the designer. Who in the audience?
not be penalized for their opinion.
Who in the audience thinks that this is the way that we should be headed with the logo? Okay. And who doesn't, who thinks something else a little bit more, a little different? Okay. Don't be shy, man, don't be shy.
For those that think a little bit.
Can we ask what different than if we go this far?
I'd like to add that it's not the color that I'm speaking of. The colors can easily be manipulated. It's the iconic or lack of iconic factor to it that says that is South Dakota.
I'd just say that that's an umbrella, but if you didn't tell me it was an umbrella, I wouldn't know. I really like Beaches of South Walton, the 3 umbrellas. I really like that. I never saw why it should change, but it did, I understand. The thing that just, to me, this does not, I like this the best of everything because of the 2 colors, but not for any other reason. So, I mean, I kind of agree with Jim, and I kind of agree we're spending money to create something that I'm not sure really does what we want it to do. But I mean, to me, if you're flipping the page, what do you see? What catches your eye?
Yeah, but I thought the whole reason for this was because you cannot read South Walton in that script.
You can.
And that's true, and that obviously is easily legible, but in 2 years, or is someone gonna try to improve that single umbrella there? Is that something that's gonna stick with Walton County for the next 10 years? And we should be looking for something.
So it's more the logo or the instead of the lettering, right?
I would say yes.
And I'm not trying to be adversarial, I'm just trying to understand.
You're right. No, I agree that the block lettering, everybody loves the block lettering. It's the overall look of the logo and what that icon is going to be moving forward. Are people going to want to put that on their car? Are they going to recognize that in a magazine? Or is it going to take 10 years for them to recognize it, or will it be changed again before that because it doesn't have enough impact?
What if you put 3 of those together?
It was actually a former version.
Was it only 2 or was it 3?
There was 3.
There was
3
3
modern umbrellas, and those didn't make the cut.
One of the things I think too is that, we advertise the beach, but yet we have so much diversity, we have so many other things here that, and we're looking to the shoulder seasons, and we look to expanding beyond the beach. I think our logo should suggest that there's more here than just sitting under a beach umbrella. That's my opinion. When you think of South Walton, I think of the iconic pine stand on Western Lake, and the bridge, and the lake, and the sunsets, and and the dunes, and I think of so much more. This doesn't say it to me. It just doesn't say it.
If I may, to me, this is obviously cleaner. You've got a ton of different age demographics in this room. You've got a ton of different age demographics that we're marketing to. I agree, the Eastern Lake is iconic. The trees are beautiful, Western Lake. But you've got to think about that from a monogramming standpoint too, from how you imprint those things, how big you can make it, how small you can make it. And so for marketability, this to me says umbrella, it says sunset, it says event canopy. It says a lot of different things if you just let your mind play with it. And so of the 3, personally, as a marketing professional, this would be my pick.
I don't know that lady, but she's brilliant.
Yeah, I don't know her either, but I agree with you. Just to answer the question that was put out, yes, because it's not legible. So if you get more than about 5 feet away from somebody wearing this on a hat or a shirt or a whatever, you can't read it. And until you get up on the billboard, we try not to use a lot of billboards, but until you get up on it, you can't read it. So it doesn't reinforce our brand. One of the reasons that we did this is it's a hybrid reason. Because one of the options will be the 3 umbrellas. Now, it may be 3 modern umbrellas, or it may be, that's kind of to be determined, but we always agreed that there were 2 things. One option would incorporate 3 umbrellas, and they would all be legible, whatever they. This, you're right, that could be an amphitheater hall, that could be when you just kind of go with this, it could be different things. The umbrella is, it ties us to our past, it ties us to the future. We, when you think about it, are an umbrella organization, okay? We have 2 main sub-destinations, the Sandestin area and the 30A area. We have 16 beach neighborhoods that we are the umbrella organization. And one of the reasons, the final reason that it kind of got hybrided in there is, you know, the beaches of South Walton. I agree with you completely, Commissioner. We are, our number one focus is to move beyond just the beaches.
Yeah.
But the beaches is what brought everybody here initially, to discover everything else. And so that umbrella replaces the word beaches off, because you can't have a logo or a destination that has 4 words in it, you know, beaches of South Walton County and Florida.
Yeah, I agree with that, yeah.
John, I don't think the symbol that we use has to be directly, suggest the beach or anything else. You look at Nike, for example, does Nike, the swoosh, does that suggest?
Movement. That suggests movement.
Well,
that's what it suggests, and
all
that's
right,
what they
but
were.
it doesn't tell you sneakers. It tells you movement. All right. So it's sort of a distant connection. Pepsi doesn't use Pepsi anymore. They use the whatever you call that symbol they have, because we've seen it for so many years that we know when we see that sign, that means Pepsi. So maybe it's ambitious to think 5, 10 years down the road that when someone sees an umbrella, they immediately think South Walton without seeing the words there. But we want to create something that eventually causes people to say, I know what that is. That's what brand recognition, I know what that is. And so something simple like this, like the Masters with their little symbol, when you see that on a hat, it's a very small symbol, but you know when you see that Masters flag, you know what it is. Same thing with Pebble Beach, when you see that little tree, you know that's, if you're a golfer, you know what that's all about. So I'm for keeping it as simple as possible, and whatever we commit to, we need to commit to it for as long as possible, not just change the symbol every
Well,
once.
and that's the real risk, is there's a lot of creative people in this room, and if tomorrow we said we need a new idea, we could get 20 of them. And Jeff brought this up, and you use Nike and Coke, billions spent, so that you and I know what that is. We are never going to be able to use that same approach. We need to have an approach that still has an emotional connection, that has consistency. And everybody in the room 4 years ago said this same thing. We know this is hard, and it's not everybody's gonna love it, but we're gonna pick this and we're gonna stick with it, because that's more important than our creative impulses or time that goes by. So we're actually our own worst enemy in some respect now, because it arguably needed to be flushed out more, it needed to be put on a shirt and a business card and take criticism that it wasn't legible. But we've gone past that, and so we've got to at least learn from that whatever we do, which means there is a lot of pressure on this, and there is a lot of difficulty in making a final decision. But it can't be this process again, because we will go backwards before we go forwards, no matter what we do with the change.
So should we do nothing?
You know, we're months down the road to try to solve a legibility problem, and we still have to solve a legibility problem. There's no doubt about that.
At the very least, I would change the cursive to one of these block letters or some format, even if we don't do a logo, or if that's what we're hung up on. Because you're right, you can't read that on a shirt or a hat or.
And it does emote a fluid, affluence, and so it had a purpose.
Sure.
For being that.
It's attractive.
Yeah.
It's just, you can't read it.
If I might, as I live in Sandestin, when I look at that water tower with that South Walton on it, I look at that, I have no idea what that is until I stare at it for a while. Oh, now I know what it is. You can't see that, and so my point is, the script is I think counterproductive. It was a nice idea, but I would be happy just to keep what you have, but to get rid of the script and to go back to something that's more legible.
John, we have one comment here.
I think this is infinitely better than the script. So we're comparing it to something that was really bad. I think going back, those original 3 umbrellas that we had, that was our that was our Coke logo. I mean, I don't understand why, I mean, everybody still recognizes those 3 umbrellas. I mean, maybe the rest of what we did originally was not there, but those 3 umbrellas are still the thing that everybody recognizes.
And there are a lot of love in this community, I'll address that question. A lot of love in this community for those 3 umbrellas, which is why we said that will be one of the options. The problem is we have the same problem we had 3 or 4 years ago. We had 3% unaided recognition of the beaches of South Walton. And everybody said that, and that's after 20-something years and millions of dollars pushing the 3 umbrellas, and it didn't, we had sub-brands in this here, Seaside, Sandestin, Rosemary Beach, that had better recognition, unaided recognition than South Walton. And so the problem that, if in the end, the BCC decides to go back to 3 umbrellas, what I will tell you, it's not going to help your brand recognition. We're trying to build a brand that is fabulous, that people love, but they don't know. And so how do you, from a marketing professional point of view, how do you get that in the consciousness of people? And that's people in the Southeast. I'm not saying we're asking people in Alaska.
So you're saying that the name itself is what you want people to...
South Walton, yes.
I was heavily involved in Seaside back when they switched from their old blue logo to blue on white. But that was the logo that had their name on it. And then they went to a real mild color stuff. But the original one was the one everybody still recognized. And even Seaside ended up going back to that blue in a lot of cases. I mean, there's some cases where you couldn't use that, and I think that's why, if somehow, the South Walton part, I mean, trying to get the South Walton into your logo, I mean, it's a valid point. So you don't need the umbrellas by themselves, you need the name.
Okay, John, I think we've got enough information to give it to you at this point in time. I think we'll probably let you kind of work with the committee. And
we definitely have some things that we'll follow up with everybody in the marketing committee. We did make one declarative statement, I would say, last week, which is, don't you dare put anything out until you do focus studies and consumer testing, which is, honest to goodness, one of the reasons that Beaches of South Walton was retired is testing was not very good. So we're trying to get to a top 10 global position, and so that's part of the history. But we'll take all of that and hatch a new plan, a revised plan, and keep endeavoring. Yes, very good. Really quick, because that was more than enough time. We don't get to talk to you guys very much about PR updates, but we've actually been doing pretty well lately. I have to give you one sort of good update, sort of bad update. We had a chance to get ABC's The Bachelor. A lot of effort was made. It would have been one of the biggest things that we ever had an opportunity to get. We spent a month on it. We were the #1 domestic location considered, and they chose an international destination for what is essentially 12 episodes in one location. They've never done that before. Since then, to add to our woes a little bit, there's been some industry information that valued a single episode anywhere from $25 million to $100 million in value. We had a chance to have 12 of them. So not everything we do turns out perfect, but we gave it a best chance, and being #1 domestic location considered is pretty substantial, and again validates a lot of the stuff that's being done. Atlanta Eats just finished filming here. There'll be a culinary segment that will run on Atlanta Eats this fall, talking about shoulder season. Couldn't be more thrilled with that. We talked about Audubon, Local Palate Lands. In a few minutes, they're coming in to do another culinary thing, staying at the Hilton Watercolor and Pearl. We had New York Resident Magazine turned a story just recently. They were one of our April FAMs. This team is, you heard about emerging markets in Miami and Nashville. We have just churned it out over the last couple of months. You heard about Food Network, Chattanooga Press was here and did stories. U.S. Air, In-Flight Magazine did stories. This is all in the last 2 months. So there's been one of the heaviest PR pushes that we've had in recent times. So that is a great report. The web RFP is active for about 2 more weeks for rebuilding website. It's been up for about 2 weeks. Got a lot of questions and a fair amount of interest. So that still, we don't talk too much about it during the open RFP period. We're hoping to get some really good candidates to select from. Speaking of websites, you all know that we're visitsouthwalton.com and .org, and we've got all the other URLs secured, like Discover South Walton and Run South Walton. SouthWalton.com in itself is owned by Mike Ragsdale, and he has offered that to us for $200,000 if we're interested. It didn't cause anybody in this building to move too quickly to find out more, but just to be aware that that was the case. And we talked about the app being changed out. We talked about co-op program, which was very successful this year. And the last thing, which is on the list, is metrics. If you want to know anything about this organization, go to our .org site. Every month, there's full-blown reports, numbers that'll make your head spin. However, we have added just recently this report, which is more digestible and has some of our key metrics. And so it's a little bit more consumer friendly, and being able to consistently report where activity's coming from, those sweeps leads which we talked about. The tables, the spreadsheets, and numbers, infinitum, is arguably a little hard. We've done that for years, and we're going to continue to do that. But please know that we do our darndest to put out stuff. There's heat mapping on that new beach finder. I look at family and foodie and walkable, our hover points that are more commonly used. So every month, religiously, financials and key metrics are put out so that we hopefully have given perspective for what this organization's accomplished. And again, I'll say this team has performed beyond what I would ever expect. So I appreciate it and thank every one of them for this spring. It's been quite amazing. That is it for me.
Thank you. Thanks, Phil. Thank you.
Good morning. I'll give you an update on sales. April and May, we attended a VIP Visit Florida planning event, and where we met with about 50, 60 top planners in the DC and the Chicago market. We will be heading next week to Portland for Collaborate Marketplace. That's the corporate market. And suppliers like myself and meeting planners from across the United States converge on that city, and we have one-on-one pre-planned appointments, so there's a lot of activity there. That's next week. I know it's only June, but we are also planning for a meeting journalist FAM that will take place in September. And those are journalists that specifically write for media publications, and our host property is the Hilton. Thank you for that. You have probably heard that there is now a North Walton event committee. And during this fiscal year, we have $15,000 allocated for that. Beginning October through the next fiscal year, we have $30,000. The first meeting for that will be Tuesday, June 24th at 1 p.m. at the Walton County Administration Building. That's a 9-member committee. Each of the 5 commissioners have appointed one person. We have a person from the Walton Area Chamber. We have one from the cities of Freeport, Defuniak, and Paxton. So that will take place on June 24th. Visitor Center update, March through May, we had 5,396 people walk through the door. That's 5,396 people walk through that door. You should see the parking area sometimes, because we're limited on parking. That is a slight drop from 2013. We had 6,018, so about a 600 drop. We also now have an iPad in the visitor center, which makes it much easier for guests to sign up to get our e-newsletter. On a different note, it's been about 18 months since we've actually met in this room. Staff was in here because we were doing renovations. We had to bring them from upstairs, downstairs, and this had staff in here. One of the decisions that was made when we renovated the building was to bring back our artwork. So you see all the artwork around the room. You've got Mary Hong, you've got Michael McCarty, Susan Lucas, an original from Dorothy Starbuck, wood carver Bill Stevens. You've got Michael Granberry, Justin Gaffrey, Andy Szynski, Donna Burgess, Allison Kraft, and Allison Wiggy. So we are very honored to have that group of artists in South Walton and honored to have their work in our conference room for you to enjoy. The other piece of work that we did was, in all the years that we had the Artist of the Year program and the Van Ness Butler program, we never really had a plaque to display to have their names on it. And I hate to say plaque because you think of a wood plaque with gold names on it. Thanks to, is John Cross still here? John Cross is our graphics designer. So John Cross collaborated with Chandler Williams, who is our photographer of the year. And Chandler Williams does more than photography. He takes his photography and overlays it on wood or metal. And that's what he did with these two, and I hate to say plaque, it's a work of art. So when you leave today, if you didn't come in this door, please go out this door and look at those two pieces. And the frame that you see around these two works of art is reclaimed wood from a Grayton Beach boardwalk that Chandler found buried under the sand. So that's pretty cool. History and art is my passion, so these two projects warm my heart. So please enjoy the art and take a look at the works of art out in the hallway. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I mean, good morning. Yeah. My name is Brian Gellenberger. I'm the Director of Beach Operations. Appreciate your time this morning. Last time we met, I was very new to the position, and I'd like to report the last 60 days has been an excellent education experience on what I signed up for, and love for the challenge. So, beach operations. What is beach operations? It is beach maintenance and code enforcement. This is our beach operations teams. We have 21 employees, including myself. And we clean the beaches, maintain the regional beach accesses, boardwalks, maintenance on the multi-use path, and also code enforcement of all the beach-related ordinances. All right, completed facility improvement projects. So the last couple of months, we've completed a couple of projects. One of them is Grayton Beach Boardwalk. Removal and replacement of the existing boardwalk on what we call the eastern drive-on access. RB Infrastructure was the contractor. And as you can see, it turned out nice. It's an elevated boardwalk. We pulled up out of the dune a little bit. It's about 420 feet, new boardwalk, showers, benches, bike rack. The second one is our regional beach access paint project. We have 10 regional, we call regional beach accesses. 2 of them are on the page. This is Blue Mountain Beach. We've got a complete exterior makeover of paint. We're currently working on the inside with our in-house forces on getting all that. We've actually completed most of it in preparation for the season. We have a few small items to correct or get fixed. Van Ness Butler, multi-use path maintenance. We contracted out through Valley Crest for the maintenance of the bike path. We expected it to take 30 to 60 days to get it back to where we like it. We still have a lot of work to do. These are a couple of slides of what the project looks like now. As you can see, it's pretty good improvement. We've cleaned up the grass on the edges. We're working on some erosion control issues on it. Also part of this is Jim has tasked us with coming up with a list of the problematic areas, mainly stormwater issues. We're putting that together and we'll come back with a report of what we think needs to be fixed and meshing in with public works on some of their stuff. This is part of our destination improvements, coastal dune lake signage. This is our first one. It's a pilot project right on the edge of the bike path at Western Lake. It's got some information about coastal dune lakes. That one in particular, we'll monitor it. We're going to put a counter on it, see what kind of activity it gets. Right now, we've put a small border around it, filled with gravel, gives you kind of place to pull off on. Yesterday afternoon, I went down, I was taking some more pictures. I noticed there was a lot of bicycle tracks and footprints in the gravel. So it looks like it's getting some just off of a kind of casual monitoring. Like I said, we do have a camera we're going to put on it and track people we'll walk up to and re-indicate. Future facility improvement projects, Dothan Avenue beach access. This is going to be a removal and replacement of the existing boardwalk. The main reason is the dune got washed out below it. This is a view down where it actually crosses over the dune. You can see the side has kind of become a ravine. We've scabbed onto the edge as kind of temporary replacement. We received all the permits for this. It's out for bid right now. The bid closing date is July 9th. We'll pick a work contract, put it through the approval process, and we'll get started around the 1st of August. Next project, here's some plans for it. About 300 feet of new boardwalk. Part of it is also put this new concrete pad here and a new parking area. This is what's called a neighborhood beach access. The big component is stormwater. This will be a exfiltration system that goes in underneath the new boardwalk to catch stormwater coming off Dothan. It really created the problem of where this whole dune got washed out. This is the new sand we put in. It's about 300 cubic yards of sand. We'll truck it in, or the contractor truck it in from Eastern Lake Access, and we'll rebuild that whole dune. Second project is Legion Park Boat Ramp. This is one of our bay accesses. It's over in Sandestin, or just west of Sandestin area. Boat ramp's old. The park is really kind of a neighborhood park, but it's used by a lot of people on the western end of our county for access to the bay. As you can see, the boat ramp is pretty bad, fairly shallow. Plans call for it to pull out the old concrete, put in a new concrete approach, and then what they call push slabs, extend it out into the bay, and it'll give a nice new boat access. This is the area of the project, new asphalt approach to it, new concrete approach, and then 2 push slabs to go out into the bay. Cross sections of it, typical project, we receive all the permits for it. We'll have a intake meeting with central purchasing, and it'll be scheduled for bid probably 1st of August, start September. Code enforcement. We started a satellite tracking program that is in conjunction with their funds. This is part of our new process and accountability initiative. It works through an application called Exora, and right now we use it mainly for, as you know, code enforcement is limited resources. We have 2 guys that patrol the beach, keep track of or enforce several different beach code ordinances. 2 people do a lot of work. So this is to help us to demonstrate to the citizens of the county what our efforts are. As you can see, it shows starts and stops. The next part we're going to implement is we can identify the different violations and how we enact our notices, our citations, and all that by signing a UPC code. And as the enforcement officers on the beach, you encounter the person who tags the UPC code and marks it and catalogs it so that we can have a complete report as to when, where, and what we are encountering. That'll help with, once again, with accountability of, okay, you know, we get a lot of complaints nowadays, believe it or not, of public versus private property, what we call the beach chair wars. Of course, the usual glass, dogs, driving on the beach without a permit. And part of it is, I haven't seen code enforcement guy in 3 days. So this helps us to demonstrate to the public, this is where we drive. And then with our new tagging of the different items, we'll be able to produce reports, track it, and also integrate it into another part of our initiative is one of the bigger ordinances we enforce is the wildlife lighting ordinances. A lot of reasons you don't see code enforcement because they're on the beach from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. mainly looking for wildlife lighting ordinances. So before, we would get notices from citizens that there's a violation. We'd go out and check it. We'd see it ourselves. And then that paperwork would go to what we call street side code enforcement. It's getting bogged down a little bit over there because they have a lot of work to do as well. So we brought that back to our side. Since we're tasked with enforcing it, I felt it was important that we could follow through and get the end result, which is compliance. So this will help them with that as well. Beach Ambassador program's coming back online. It's been around for a while. We've had a little bit of issues with staffing it. We hired a guy in preparation for this season. He had something better to do after he started. We have recently hired a new person, so you'll see the beach buggy out, and that's our soft approach to code enforcement. Educate for voluntary compliance. They ride up down the beach, meet and greet people, explain our ordinances. Mainly they look for people that are in violation. Explain to them what the rules are, ask them to voluntarily comply. Last but not least, some of the things I'm working on as a 9-day program is resource assessment. We're working on a complete beach and bay access inventory, the catalog, pictures, description of the access, replacement cost, and all that. Multi-use path repair and beautification program. That's in conjunction with Valley Crest taking over. We're identifying all different areas where we have issues. We can repair, beautify, and get our bike path back into its former glory. Beach pavement program, in-house versus privatization. Been tasked with exploring the option of keeping that program in-house or putting out for privatization. We're putting numbers on it to figure out which is more cost feasible, which gives us the best value. Code enforcement, resource management, and distribution. Once again, in conjunction with the tracking, trying to figure out where do we need code enforcement during the day, during the year, or the week, the month, the year, so that we can best use those strained resources in the most efficient, effective manner. And that's it. Any questions?
I have a question. How do you feel about the staffing level of code enforcement? Is 2 enough, or should we have more?
We could, and we talked about making the beach ambassador code enforcement or even a part-time code enforcement. We've talked about Brian maybe getting certified and even me as a code enforcement so that we can relieve them of some of the administrative responsibilities and sending letters and things like that. Part of me says you can never have enough. I mean, we could have 3 people, 24 hours a day. So that would be 9 people a day plus all your overhead. Because if they're down in Inlet Beach, there's always something going on and some violation occurring in Sandusky. And it's kind of like the sheriff allocation of resources. What is the community willing to bear? What are we willing to pay for? We have enough to keep the programs monitored. Could we use more? Sure, and we're going to have that conversation. We've been having that conversation, and we're going to continue to have that conversation on the allocation of our personnel resources within the team.
Well, going from 2 to 9 doesn't seem to make sense, but I would think a lot of it would be seasonal. If we had 2 year-round and maybe add a 3rd or 4th or something.
Yeah, and the problem with that is a 40-hour training requirement, and then there's annual CE, continuing education requirements for a code enforcement officer. So if you're only going to use them for 100 days of summer and maybe 30 days or 45 days in spring break, are we willing to take the resources and send them every year to continually keep them if they're just going to work that part-time? We have
40 hours, what do they get served? Is that an online program?
No, it's
a 40-hour class you go to in the state exam.
I say, so you've got to go somewhere to.
Right.
There's a couple of different universities that give that course. It's called Bar Association Certified or Code Enforcement. Most of them are in Orlando and Tampa. They offer classes about 4 times a year. So, like I said, 5-day program, take a test at last day.
It might be a little hard to get volunteers in, so it's, I was
It would be.
the best people to do that enforcement, and it's seasonal, for lack of a better term, try to advertise some of the, establishments.
of the reason we were considering getting certified ourselves is all the even administrative duties require that you be a certified code enforcement. Write the letters, you have to, to observe the violation, you have to, yeah.
So you're right, a couple of questions. One, so do they get a badge or something when they're code enforcement? So they're on the beach, they're driving the big trucks or they're driving these new little vehicles?
We have full-size trucks as well as four-wheelers.
Okay.
At night, we drive the trucks, sometimes we drive the four-wheelers. At night, most of the function is leave no trace and wildlife lighting ordinance. During the day, it's, glass, dogs, driving without permits, flag violations.
So they write a ticket for that?
They do.
Because I see
Or a
that the
warning.
sheriff's.
We'll give you a warning or and/or.
It depends on what it is. They have discretion based on the incident. So it depends on who it is, when they do it, that person's attitude. Ultimately, we want compliance. We understand we're bed tax collectors, and that these are bed tax collectors' patrons. So we don't want to come off as, hey, we're ticketing everybody and they get this bad reputation, but don't go to Walton County or South Walton. But we have a lot of locals and a lot of tourists on the same beaches, and sometimes they'll see a person one day with the dog, and they'll give an opportunity to get the dog off the beach. They see them the next day, but they get tickets. So.
Yes, Miss Betty has a question.
I have a question on right here. On your code enforcement, do you actually have someone 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? Because I have to call the sheriff's department all the time. And where I live, there's a lot going on. It's getting worse.
Right.
The park has been discovered, which is fine, but we really need more time.
Yes, ma'am, I agree. No, to answer your question is no, we do not have it 24/7. We do a pretty good job with the two people that we have. They have a rotating schedule program. We have somebody usually from 6:30 to 3:30, and then in the evening from 11 to 7. During the busy season, we'll change that around so that we're covering the beach more in the evening. Sometimes we'll target different violations. Leave no trace gets to be very important this time of year. Turtle lighting ordinance or wildlife lighting ordinance is all year round. Fortunately, we have a couple of different organizations that help us with that as far as identifying violations. The glass, dogs,
Fireworks. That's the worst.
yeah. Now, some of these, are actually sheriff department activities. They're not necessarily a beach ordinance, a beach code enforcement.
Fireworks, you should call the sheriff.
Right.
Okay, don't even, you should call the sheriff if it's fireworks.
We don't handle that at all on the beach.
That is not one of their primary functions. So they can go up and, just like you can go up and say, hey, fireworks aren't allowed out here on the beach. We appreciate that. People would probably be more willing to listen to somebody in a big truck with a badge on their hip, but actually the sheriff enforces, that's their enforcement.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it.
Since our last meeting in April, Sharon Century, the director of admin, which was on, who starts tomorrow, interviewed to replace that position. As Brian alluded to, TBC has interviewed and hired Haley Laughlin to be the beach ambassador. She starts June 16th. She comes to us from the Center as a Beach Golf and Country Club. Last week, we welcomed our second intern into the intern program. Her name is Natalie Loretto. She is attending her public relations degree at Ole Miss. She'll be with us for the summer semester. Staff and directors have worked hard to prepare the budget at before you today to get ready for the solution. That's about it. Training, orientating employees.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Go ahead. Pam, something I wanted to mention, I mentioned to Commissioner Meadows. I I worked for an organization that had a thing called the Wall of Fame. And I think rather than use the term plaque, you might want to consider it something.
Oh, I don't want to use the name plaque.
No, no, so I'm saying,
Yeah.
rather than use the word plaque, a Wall of Fame might be the way to go. The Wall of Shame.
And that's a good segue. The next time you come to the building, I want to thank Pam and her team, and it's been really the marketing folks and the sales folks and the admin folks have done a tremendous job trying to get this set up. You know, we've got flags, and we're actually an official, meeting place. Besides the two non-plaque Wall of Fame things, we're going to put all the awards down that hallway. So the next time you have a chance to come into the building or within the next month, we should have all the recent awards put up down that wall so that when somebody walks in, they start getting a sense of the accomplishment and the history of the organization, of what's been going on. So
Thank you for mentioning that, and I failed to. This organization and this team that's sitting in here has 17 awards in the last several months.
So we have a very talented team, and they're working very hard, in case you can't tell, to try to meet your expectations. I want to reinforce something that Michelle mentioned in the financials. It was the best April ever in the history of this organization, the most bed tax ever collected in the month of April. So the bed tax collectors, staff, everybody that has anything to do with that number, which is a lot of people in this county, they did a great job, and it continues to look up. On the working issues, I'll just go highlight two. If you look at number 14, develop beach access parking plan. I want to let you know that the Board of County Commissioners is going to hold 3 beach parking meetings. It will be before the South End Board of County Commissioners meeting in the months of June, July, and August. So the next one will be June 10th at 3 p.m. They will always start an hour before the BCC meeting, June 10th, over at the South Annex. And in June, it will be Scenic Gulf Drive. And then in July, it will be the west end of 38 no, it's going to change now.
Well, yeah,
Go ahead,
at the last meeting, I think you were absent the last meeting
Oh.
with that week. This meeting, June 10th, it will be Scenic Gulf Drive, because there weren't a lot of parking issues there, so it will probably be very quick. So it will be the west end of 30A to County Road,
395?
no.
393.
83. So it's Scenic Gulf Drive plus 30A all the way to 83. And then the next one will be 83 to 395, and the next one will be 395. And if we have to have more, we certainly will. Also too, one of the things too is it's not a beach access parking plan that we're listening to. It's really it's a review of the public parking study assessment for each section. So it not only addresses beach parking, but any public parking, such as in the right-of-way and various and sundry other locations. So just as an additional information.
And then the other bullet is number 24, reserve calculations. That's been alluded to a couple of times. We're looking at that $36 million. When you take out 21, which is what if we get state funding, that's what we'll be able to take out of our reserves, and we'll still have to borrow $10 million to do the hurricane storm damage reduction project. Then we're looking at 4 months worth of operating costs, which is, some people would say that's light, but you still have to pay people even when no bed tax revenues are coming in because the beaches have been damaged. You still have to pay the light bill and the water bill. Those folks like to get paid. And then $1 million to $2 million, we're still working out the plan on a marketing where we go and we say, hey, the boardwalks are open, the walkovers are open, come on back down to South Walk. So we will have a plan that we're going to take to the county commissioners, and I will brief each of them probably by the end of this month or by the middle of next month. Well, this is our reserve plan, and this is all part of the budget brief that we're going to give to them, because there's not a good sense, even in the bed tax community, of what the money we have, what we use it for, what what it's reserved for. It's just, you guys have a lot of money, so y'all should pay for X, Y, Z, A, B, C, and so we're just trying to educate the public on what we have. But if there are any questions on any of the other 23 working issues, I'll be glad to answer those at this time.
Jim, are we doing Saturday trash pickup?
We are not, we're still working with Waste, well, some is. We're still working with Waste Management to try to solve the problem, and there's about 10 different permutations. Just make, for everything from make people put lids on their trash cans, and the trash that they have has to fit, so if it doesn't, they need to buy more trash cans with lids, to having dumpsters where house cleaners, keepers can dump it off to other items, yes. It doesn't seem to have been this bad yet this year, but it's still a problem.
The only reason I ask is I just noticed, actually Sunday, we were driving down 30A in June Allen, and there was a home that had clearly been checked out of, and there were no trash cans. They just had bags of trash out in front of the house. Is there somewhere that you report that to?
Yes. Report it to our office, Commissioner Meadows' office. Yeah, report it to us and we'll take care of it.
Okay.
And then the next thing is the RISE 2 agreement legislation that we got passed through the state legislature, and I apologize on this. I forgot to delete out the line numbers. Kudos to our team, Kelly Horton and Rich Heffley and the staff for working on this. One of the first things I asked when I came on board was, who are the top 15 bed tax collectors? I just want to go meet with them. And the clerk was very nice and said, I can't tell you. And I said, I don't want to know how much they collect. I don't want to know how much tax they pay. I don't want to know how many employees they have. I don't want to know any of their trade secret stuff. I just want to know who the 15 largest are, because I want to go introduce myself. I probably know most of them anyway, so just tell me. And I can't tell you. And he pulled out the RISE 2 agreement and the statute and everything and said, here's why I can't tell you. And I said, okay, well, I want to get that changed. Because the other thing that we're going to work with is we're going to get with the bed tax collectors, and we're going to try to get it to where we can identify an average daily rate in this destination and an occupancy rate in this destination. It's a very unusual, as all of y'all know, this is a very unusual destination. We have a lot of single-family residences and hardly any hotels. And so, the hotels, it's easy in the hotel world to pull up the STAR report and say, okay, well, here's all my numbers. It's impossible in this destination. But we're going to work with the clerk to formulate a questionnaire or a plan and get some data input so that we can figure this out. We made it through the State House unscathed, but once it got to the Senate, Disney raised its head, and so you'll see down there after line 22, where it starts, statistics may not be published under this section if a single taxpayer has remitted more than 33% of the tax that is subject to this, which Disney does in their location. And so they're protected. They won't ever have to release their information, but it doesn't affect this destination. So we will be able to get some data, and we're going to work with Philip and the bed tax collectors to do that. So I just wanted to give you all an update on that. And I'll be able to go up and ask who the 15 largest bed tax collectors are in this county, and I'll be able to find out. So a couple of things, a couple of cleanup items. We have had some committee member changes on some of our committees. We took care of your representative on the Beach Management Committee, but we have added, and Pam will correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we've added Lori Smith to the Marketing and Media Committee, and tenant pending your approval. So we'd like, is that the only one on that committee?
My committee's Christy Milligan.
I'm sorry.
Lori Smith
Yeah.
fulfilled a vacant seat, a declined seat.
Motion to approve. Do we need a motion?
Yes, ma'am.
Motion to approve Lori Smith.
Is that Laura Smith from Eastside?
Yes, it is.
Motion and a second.
Second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
Okay, and Beach Management,
Did you do Christy Milligan?
not yet, because that sheet's back here, and when I get to that sheet, I'll make that move, ask for that motion. Yeah. I'm not gonna forget you. Yeah, Beach Management, I don't think there may be one, but Leonard, Matthew, all those folks I recognize from the original list. On destination improvement, Brian, did you have any new members that replaced Mary Lou? I think all those were on the same. Blaine was going to drop off, but he's going to stay. So that takes us to the Events, Activities, Arts, and Culture Committee. And we did have a couple of new ones here, I think, or at least Christie. Just Christie. So we'll need a motion and a second to approve Christie.
To approve Christie, motion,
So moved.
second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries, thank you.
Okay, and that's all the staff has. I just want to thank the team. They truly have been on the road constantly, working hard. But I think it's showing in the numbers, and from all the bed tax collectors, I won't speak for the ones that are sitting here at the table. What we're hearing on reservations and projections for this summer are very, very good. So hopefully we will realize that.
On the committee things, would you add the North Walton, what are you gonna call, what is that North Walton?
North Walton Events Advisory Committee.
Okay.
And we'll add
We'll
that.
add them,
Yes, ma'am.
and then their names and their meeting times, that'd be great. When is their meeting again?
June 24th at 1 PM in the admin building outside Larry's office. Actually, I guess the main conference room.
In the
In the
okay.
King Expo.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks. At what time?
1 PM.
Okay.
I would like to add,
Yeah, one thing.
yeah, I would like to add one thing. As we all represent Walton County, it's very, very important. We are all struggling with brand recognition and identifying, using the words Destin and all that in our names or mailing addresses and such. TripAdvisor, as much as I don't like it, TripAdvisor is huge, and they are starting to see more and more reports coming out on TripAdvisor where that holds more merit than in the past where AAA used to have more merit if you were 3 or 4 or 5 star or kind of, sorry. Recently, as I've been adding them, obviously there's a certain procedure that you do on TripAdvisor, they monitor it and approve the blog and posting. But please put on there in conjunction with whatever your property is, thank you for staying with us at the Hilton Sandestin Beach, along the beaches of South Walton, Florida, or something like that. Putting South Walton County in there is imperative, because it's just going to take time. It's not going to happen with an umbrella logo or a sun or a chair. You've got to keep putting and reinforcing that in there. And I would just ask everybody to please do that, whether you like TripAdvisor or not.
Especially with the recent findings that TripAdvisor has identified Destin as one of the top 5 beaches to visit. And part of what they're talking about is actually our beach.
Actually, most of that is South Walton. And I want to thank Gary and Megan and the Hilton team because they have actually been on the forefront. What he's saying is exactly true. It's kind of like the Facebook likes, because once you get in there and people you like are in there and you like what they like, it becomes an exponential curve as opposed to just a straight line curve. And I think once we generate that, and I fight this battle every single day because we have a lot of folks that span both destinations, and it's just hard for them, but everybody's trying to help out.
Someone told me a funny story the other day. She went to dinner at Bijou Bistro in Baytown, and the waiter came up to her and said, "Welcome to Destin." Not even the right county.
Yeah.
Well, it's good news.
Every little bit helps.
Make that note.
Call
Okay.
them up.
Any comments, public comment? Okay.
I just wanted to ask, now that the half cent is going away and it's not going to be allocated for infrastructure, what are we going to do for money for infrastructure? New beaches, beach accesses,
We're not planning on doing anything. We can meet our current obligations, which is the bike path maintenance and some of our signage, our walkovers, our restrooms. I mean, we're doing a lot, but as opposed to any new initiatives, I think would require some change in the structure, in the funding structure. And that was the point we tried to make at the BCC. It's not about whether the old half-cent sunsets. The old half-cent was going to sunset no matter what. And I understand both sides, and my personal position is that I will do what the BCC tells me, and their responsibility is to resource me to do what they tell me. And what they have told me to do to date, they have resourced this organization to do that. If they want us to take on improvements in the entry, in the arrival points, or they want us to take on a bunch of other projects, they have to resource that. And I think Commissioner Meadows has led that charge and tried to lead that charge last Tuesday or whatever.
Yeah,
So,
I'll add,
I mean, asking then about that.
I'll add,
Since
yeah.
it's not going to be there, then are we going to get support from the commissioners to actually budget some funds
Well-
to do some of the things we need to do?
well, good question. And at the meeting, I don't know who all was at that meeting, but at the meeting, yeah, I brought up the point that if some of these things aren't paid for, that tourist impact and tourist revenues, ad valorem tax is gonna have to pay for them, because we can't afford not to do some of these things. I mean, some of these things we can't afford to. The bike paths look unbelievably, I mean, they look so much better than they did, 3 months ago. I mean, it's just like night and day. If we don't do that, then at some point, ad valorem taxes are going to have to go, not incrementally up, but way up. And we don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I know the other commissioner wanted. So there was a comment that, after the election's over, perhaps, we could look at putting another tax, putting the half-cent tax back. There were some bed tax people there, though, who did speak against having that tax because they did not want the bed tax to have to pay for it. I mean, they didn't want to have to add another. They wanted to be able to subtract half a cent from what they were collecting, was what kind of I gathered. So it was.
I just, as a member of the public, just looking at the whole picture here in Walton County, I just wanted to note that we need to have funds to increase access to the beach, because with everything that is going on in the development world, more people moving down here, the parking issues that we already have, I just want somebody to tell me where people are going to go to the beach. How are they going to get there if you're not renting a house or living on the beach or living within X amount of walkable blocks to the beach? Where are people who are coming down here to go to the beach or live down here, live north of 98 or live in North Walton? Where are they going to go to the beach?
And I agree with you, and I think it's always an ongoing, I call it battle, to get the money that we need to do things down here that we desperately need, and we're going to continue that fight. And there are signs, there are good signs that we're going to get some more money, but we have to continue that fight.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? All right, do we have a motion to adjourn? So moved.
I think I broke the table.